This is Comic Geek Speak, top 5 comic books for beginners.
Hey!
Hello.
That's what happens when dancing is a mistake. Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Levesine.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Everly.
I completely forgot about the introducing part because I was laughing too hard at the cord coming out.
Oh, it's too good. It's too good. It's too good. A gentle reminder that when you're rocking out to your own podcast's music, do it softly.
Do it, Dusemo. Do it slowly.
Excellent. Well, welcome one and all to the show. Those of you on video, going old school tonight.
Yes,
with
classic.
With the retro Comic Geek Speak shirt. I'm not looking at the back right now, but it says 2006 on the back for the tour shirt. So that's
right. Our contour for that year.
You got it.
God.
Yep. So it has been a long time, and decided to put this one on as behind the veil. The day we're recording this is 10 years to the day of the pre-show of the Comic Geek Speak Super Show 2011.
Jeez.
And then the next day we started the fun. We were all gathered in Deemer's basement and celebrating, and Tasha made that amazing cake, and those were good times had by all that day.
Is that the gathering where Pants got his nickname, or was that a previous one?
That was a previous one. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
He had
the
to
year
have
of
already
that.
been Pants by 2011.
I couldn't remember.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Because I was introduced to him as Pants, so he definitely.
I just assumed he was always Pants, even when he was like
No.
a wee tyke. He was just Pants.
No, that came after the show. It was in Deemer's basement. Him and I were playing bumper pool game that Brian had in his basement, and Matt came up
wearing
with it.
his Letterman pants.
That's it.
Worldwide pants jacket.
Yeah.
And pants across his chest
Oh, yes.
in giant yellow letters. And Matt says, "Come on, Pants, shoot already."
Yep, that's where it started.
Well, whether he knew he was Pants before he was Pants, he's always been Pants. And welcome to a top 5 episode that was requested a little while ago.
Great topic.
Excellent topic of top 5 comic books for beginners. And hopefully you can't hear the police sirens too loudly outside my window right now. But either way, excellent timing.
Just right there.
Excellent timing as always. But we've been. This is something that we've sort of like hinted at the past and even touched on a little bit. But this is a full top 5 for any of you guys who are just starting in this hobby of ours, who may have found us as a podcast and we're living vicariously through us, and now get to experience some of our favorite comic books that we feel would be a good step in the door for you or your loved ones or your kids or what have you. And as usual with these top 5s, this is top 5s of the moment. They could change tomorrow. Sure. They could change Tuesday, or they can change 5 minutes after we record. But either way, these are our top 5 for the moment.
They could change, as Adam says, his favorites, and I go, "Oh, I forgot that one."
Right. Oh, yeah. It's not unusual for us to want to mulligan our own list as soon as we hear the better things that our colleagues.
Oh yeah. Yep. The last 3 running top 5s that we've done, someone on the forums or the supergroup has mentioned one of them. I'm like, damn it, I completely forgot about that one.
and my problem with any of these lists is they start out as my favorites. Mm-hmm. So some of them wouldn't make sense for people who would think, well, that doesn't really sound like a beginning one. Right. Well, it does in my mind.
Oh yeah,
sometimes there's a reason and sometimes there's not.
Mm-hmm.
That's all any of us can do.
Absolutely. And when there is a will, there's a way. Like if it was a favorite for you and it got your foot in the door, it's very possible it could do the same for someone else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Before we get fully started on this, I will yet again remind you folks over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak, the good folks that have donated to the show over the last couple of months. The donations keep coming, and every time they do, it just puts a smile on my face. And today, as we look at this, as we record today, we're at 104 patrons at $305 a month.
Wow.
Very much keeping the lights on every single day that you
Thank you.
continue to donate to the show. We really do appreciate it. We also got an incredibly generous $50 donation.
Yes, we did.
Over at the
Yes, we did.
over at the PayPal recently. And yeah, it's just anything you guys do, just really, really fills me with joy. So thank you so much for continuing to support the show over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak or the donation page at comicgeekspeak.com, whichever you prefer. Okie dokie. So anyone who has not listened to a top 5 before, similar to the way that we did our best ofs, we'll go around the table, say what our number is in that motion, and then go ahead and get further in depth afterwards. So that also gives us the option to steal one of the fellow recommendations of one of our geeks and go to one of our alternates, because that's the way we roll. And Chris, you did bring up an interesting point before we were recording as to exactly who the beginners are in this situation. And I think it really does depend on not only our own list but the way we look at it. Whether or not we're making recommendations for older listeners or younger listeners. Either way, what we present here could very well be that that thing you hand off to a teenager or an adult that might be looking to get into the passion. I think that makes the most sense.
Well put, my friend. Well put.
Yep. And with that, onward to our number 5s. And Murd, I'll start it off with you. What is your number 5 top 5 comic book for beginners?
The weirdest thing on my list, Ian. Tales of the Bean World.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
I remember that.
Fantastic.
Tremendous.
My number 5, Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art.
Oh, that's a good one.
By Scott
That's a
McCloud.
great one.
That is a good start.
Oh, I love doing top 5s. Oh.
All right, Chris.
Darwin Cook's Parker the Hunter.
Oh, that's a good one too.
And Shane.
Yeah. Shane always agonizes during top 5s.
I do because they're all my favorites in some way, but I'm gonna go with Bone.
Yay!
I didn't even think of Bone. Oh,
Now this is
about
the
all
volume
ages.
1
Oh,
hard, but
amazing.
if you get it in individuals, if you get it in trades, if you get it in the one black and white volume, it's all good. I've read it both black and white and in color.
Well, Mr. Deemer is not on this episode, but somewhere he's going, good job.
I was just going to say, Deemer smiles upon you, Shane.
Yes.
He's busy constructing his Japanese garden right now.
Oh, yeah. No, he is. And I kind of just want to frolic in it more than anything else.
It's beautiful.
It's delightful.
It's beautiful.
Of course it is.
All right. I'm so glad I started off with the weird. So, Murd, please regale us.
Okay. Well, yeah, this top 5 gave me a little bit of trouble, I have to admit, because, well, for one thing, my favorite comics tend to be the ones that are, steeped in history and dense continuity, which is usually not the best place for beginners, for new readers, people new to the hobby to start. So I couldn't just write down my 5 favorite series or miniseries or what have you. I had to think a little harder. And the other problem was, when someone asks me for reading recommendations, someone who was just trying to break into comics, my first instinct is not to just recommend something to them, it's to ask them a follow-up question. Well, what are you into now? Like, what forms of popular media or genres therein are your favorites? And then recommend a comic that suits those tastes, because there is such a huge diversity of material in the medium in comics. And also the aforestated problem of are we doing this for all ages readers? Are these supposed to be things for young people getting started in comics, or are we presuming that this is adult readers? For the most part, I assumed that these recommendations were being made to a full-grown adult who is interested in getting into comics.
Fair enough.
But the first thing on my list here is my one concession to a truly all-ages audience. Because as the blurb on the back cover of my Bean World Omnibus says, it's been thrilling and delighting readers from grade school to grad school for 3 decades now. Yes. Tales of the Bean World is the brainchild of a man named Larry Marder. He both wrote and illustrated it. He's worked in comics in kind of a sales and editorial capacity for many years, but this is his one big creative opus. And he started it back in the mid 80s as the ongoing series Tales of the Bean World for Eclipse Comics. And years later, Dark Horse picked it up and is the current holder of it, and is the most recent collections that have been published have been through Dark Horse. So all Bean World material is in print right now. I was just talking to folks at Golden Eagle today. There's a few omnibus volumes available, 3 in total, collecting everything from the 80s, from Eclipse, all the way up through the more recent things that Dark Horse has put out. And Bean World is, it really is all ages appropriate, but it's thought provoking. I think deceptively simple is a word that very clearly applies to it. If you're a fan of Fraggle Rock, I think you're going to find a great deal of similarity between Bean World and that, because it's a story about these happy little bean-like creatures, these little anthropomorphic legumes that live on this little island in the middle of the sea on top of this oddly stratified layers of earth that they can travel through, and that they need to in order to gather the different resources that they need to survive. They have to send hunting parties down into the realms below to perform the odd rituals that they must in order to gain the chow. That's what they call it, chow, the food stuff that sustains their life functions. And so it's all about their life ways, about this odd little fantasy ecology that they occupy, and how their lives and their needs and desires interconnect and blend with the other creatures that live in this same realm as they do. It's an alternate reality. It's a magical place. It follows its own rules and laws of physics and what have you. But the interconnectedness and interdependency and respect for both each other's within the bean community, each other's respect for each other's desires and
Cultural norms, perhaps?
well, so something like that. It's a
Yeah.
pretty. There's a caste system in place in the beans world. There are the chow hunters and gatherers, the people that have to take up their spears and go down and make war with the hoi polloi, which are these odd-looking iworks like creatures that live down there. They're compulsive gamblers. They spend all their time betting on this and that and this and that. But they are the only that are able to convert the sprout pods of the bean's deity, this giant sentient tree called Grandmapa. Grandmapa gives the beans sprout butts, they're called, and then the bean hunting parties have to go down to the hoi polloi realm and throw these sprout butts at the hoi polloi, and they break them down into the substance, the chow, the substance that the beans eat. So they're the hunter gatherers, and there's also there's artists and musicians. There's one sole scientist inventor named Professor Garbanzo, whose job it is to come up with new applications for the weird little shapes, little objects of different shapes that are in the 4 different strata separating the bean world from the hoi polloi down below. So it's a very meticulously organized mythology. And there's a lot of positive lessons there for younger readers. It's, as I said, the artwork is deceptively simple, and it can be grasped easily by any reader. And they're fun, engaging little stories with lovable characters. It's got kind of a quaint, eccentric, snappy little a tone to the writing. It's a little bit similar to Mike Allred's voice when he writes his Madman stories. And it's fitting, I guess, because both concepts, Madman and Bean World, originated in the indie comic scene of the mid 80s. But it's still out there in publication, and it doesn't feel at all dated. I mean, I read it for the first time myself. I think I'd read one old issue of Bean World a long time ago, but I picked up this collection I'd gotten from Dark Horse a couple of years ago, just this past Easter Sunday, because it seemed like a good, wholesome, like Sunday morning fare. Plus, it stars anthropomorphic beans, and beans, jelly beans, Easter. It just seemed like the perfect thing for the occasion.
Oh, sure.
And I burned through it. It was a volume about yay thick, about a couple inches thick, and I just burned right through the whole thing that very afternoon. It's really engaging and charming, and it really is suitable for all ages. So yeah, I think, and it's good intellectual grist too if you look beneath the surface of the seemingly simplistic stories and artwork. So yeah, it seemed to me like a very good a first timer kind of book. And just going back to our usual the disclaimer you gave, Ian, where these things can change from week to week, month to month, even hour to hour. If we had done this list, this top 5, just a couple of weeks ago, this probably wouldn't have been on it, because Easter wouldn't have happened yet, and I wouldn't have read it. But I have read it, and it's on my list for now. Tales of the Bean World by Larry Marker.
Excellent. And taking a look at the art, it is simplistic, but in all the right ways. That much I can definitely tell. Even taking a look at it, like it just screams fun to me.
That's the Boomer Band. Those are the local musicians. That you see.
Nice.
And Murd, is he still producing new stories?
Not for some time, I don't think.
Okay. But this started publishing in the 80s, and he's producing new stories into the 2000s, I assume?
Yeah, with long gaps in between.
Okay, that's impressive.
Nice. All right, so moving it over to Understanding Comics. When I thought of this list, I thought to myself, how would people who are curious about the medium get into it? And my brain went to, what better book than this? One that literally tells you how your food is made, how comic books themselves get to exist, and the genre itself, it breaks down so well, while also, going into some history stuff, but also having fun along the way. And that's very much what Scott McCloud did with Understanding Comics. I mean, the artwork itself is, incredibly descriptive while also at the same time being very, very simple. But I love the layout that he chose on these pages. Ones that like draw you in while telling you stuff, almost along the lines of like Schoolhouse Rocks when you think about it. Where like it's fun but also educational at the same time. And that's very much what Scott McCloud was attempting to do with this book. And he really did succeed.
Oh, he sure did. Huh.
There are a few tomes that exist that I feel get comic books nearly as well as Scott McCloud did with this. And it's a reason why it's material that has been colleges have turned to for their visual arts programs to assign as essential reading, and that says a lot about the work. And I think that anybody who's even like the slightest bit interested in comics should just give this a shot and then see what they think afterwards, because yeah, it breaks down the medium while at the same time also just giving you an in and being like, okay, here's the ground, start running. And I appreciate that so much.
Ian, I'm so glad you chose this. And again, the fun of top 5, I didn't even think of this, but yeah, anyone who's interested in really understanding the comic book medium, you need to read this book. As long as comic books exist in some form, this book is gonna be relevant, and people are gonna be reading it. It's that important.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's a great choice because, especially if you're giving it to someone who's older and has been a relative stranger to comics all their lives. Because I was surprised back in grad school when some of my fellow grad students were being introduced to comics reading for the first time. How many of them said, I didn't know in what order to read the panels? Or
wow.
It's more than just left to right, up to down. They were kind of confused and befuddled by it, and this understanding comics helped to clear up some of that confusion and to establish a basic graphic or sequential arts literacy. So it's for that reason, in addition to all the ones you cited, it's a great place for people who have not read comics before to start. It actually teach them how to just the mechanics of reading comics.
Exactly. Yeah.
That actually surprises me a little bit, Adam. I didn't expect that much of a problem reading comics from an adult picking it up for the first time.
Those of us who've been reading them since childhood, we kind of have an unfair advantage. When our supple little brains were able to pick up new skills and new literacies like that much easier. But if you come to it as an adult when your brain has already started to harden and shrivel.
Well, I was going to say, Shane, I mean, the way that I think about it is, I didn't start reading manga until later on in life. I read comics, and comics go one way. I've been reading it since junior high, and I was used to it. But then when I switched over to manga, it did take me a while to get used to the opposite direction.
Well, and it does, but at least that's just almost literally the opposite direction.
Fair.
Versus picking up a panel. I mean, I guess, like Adam said, I was much younger. I take it for granted that it's easy to follow the sequential artwork. But I guess if you've never given that thought, could run into some problems with that, especially if you get into obscure page layouts and splash pages and whatnot. Yeah.
Or
Interesting.
think of how many comics you've read where they've had to put an arrow pointing in the right direction because of like, strange
True.
layout and what have you. So like
True.
sometimes even the more experienced comic reader has trouble reading it without a little bit of help.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very true.
All right, so there's my number 5, and Chris, over to you.
All right. So like Murd, I had a similar, let's call it a delightful challenge when it came to this premise, because a lot of my automatic top picks are books that, like Murd said, are very dense with history, continuity. Like, for example, Daredevil Born Again is not on this list.
Yeah.
Dark Knight Returns is not on this list. And I really struggled because, again, in a delicious way, because of trying to, okay, whether it's a teen or adult, I want to get them into the hobby. What do I hand them? And I had to eliminate a lot of my favorite, books or stories. They're just too dense. Like I'm not going to give somebody Watchmen, for example, as their first experience with comic books.
Thank you for saying that, because my entire American Comics for Manga Fans panel started after, and I've explained this before on the show, but like it started when somebody went to one of those panels and immediately one of their first suggestions was Watchmen. And I'm like, no, you have to at least be familiar with the medium at least a little bit to really grasp that.
Absolutely. So I started with Darwin Cook's Parker the Hunter for a couple of reasons. One, it's a wonderful example of how comic books, the medium, encompasses so much more than the superhero concept. And Cook's sense of design. I mean, the book is just a visual feast. That whole series is all those books. But a lot of people enjoy crime noir. They enjoy films or television shows or books that address that type of story. And Richard Stark's, or i.e. Donald Westlake's Parker, is one of the classics in that genre. And Cook, I remember when it came out that Cook was going to do this, I was elated because I thought, oh, he was the perfect artist to take on that type of subject. And everything from the design of the interior of the book jacket all the way through, it's a magnificent example of what the comic book medium is capable of. And I think it's a great way to bring a lot of people who enjoy those types of stories in other media, as many people do, to make them aware of what comic books can achieve. So that's my number 5.
Yeah. And I mean, talk about stunning artwork too.
Oh yeah.
And so much that he's able to do with muted colors, because like it's not black and white, but it's definitely, only a couple of tones used, but still every bit that Darwin brings to the artwork is just beautifully crafted and superb.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing these, Ian, because again, a lot of people, let's face it, a lot of people, when they think comic books, if they're totally removed from that world, they're gonna latch upon certain stereotypes.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, we were recording one episode, and Pants was incensed that people were still thinking like Batman was, pow, bam, biff, essentially. And I think this book goes a long way in demonstrating to those who aren't in the know that the medium really has no limits. I mean, it can address basically any genre, and in the hands of a late great master like Darwin Cook, I mean, it doesn't get any better. So, yeah. And Ian, you chose 2 great pages there.
Thank you. I'm thrilled beyond belief that Darwin Cook is somewhere on our list, because of the masters that have passed, I know on the super group recently there was a post reminding me that Michael Turner's passing. Yep. That I think it's been 10 years now, crazy enough, but that guys like Darwin Cook, and I mean, we discussed this in our Book of the Month Club episode that we did for New Frontier, that they're no longer with us, but still the wealth of wonder that they left behind that people can page through. That's what I want people new to the medium to be able to enjoy, bar none.
Not only that, because to add to what you're saying, Ian, and I know I'm not an art student or a critic, so I'm speaking generalities here, but I remember when I first saw I think it was Batman Ego. I think
Mhm.
that was one of the first things he did in comics that I was aware of, at least. And I was just floored by the sense of design in that story.
Mhm.
And I was guessing, okay, is he accommodating? Is he bringing in like aspects of like architectural design? Like this stuff is amazing. Like the way like animation. And I think a lot of people who don't really know anything about comics, but they enjoy other forms of art, when they see that, they're going to realize, my God, what this medium is capable of so much more than I realized.
Oh yeah.
So,
yep, definitely.
That's my number 5.
Well done. And Shane, over to you.
Okay. So I didn't read this until one of the first super shows we had at the convention center. That's where I picked up
Convention Center.
Convention Center. That's where I picked up the first one volume of it. I'm fairly certain it was the black and white copy when they first collected it all into one tome, and I wasn't sure I'd like it. It always seemed to me to be a little bit too kiddish, something that I wouldn't enjoy, that wouldn't be adventurous or interesting enough for me. And I was woefully wrong in every respect. I started reading it and I couldn't put it down. It follows the adventure of Phone Bone, Phony Bone, Smiley Bone. They meet up with a woman, Thorn. Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
They meet the Red Dragon. They battle the rats. It's just amazing, this adventure that he goes on. In some ways, it's very Lord of the Rings-ish. In some ways, it's just a kiddie slapstick Saturday morning cartoon. But the story from start to finish is absolutely enthralling. At the same time, as soon as I finished reading it, I should say, not at the same time, but as I finished reading it, my oldest boy at that time was very young. He read it, and he read it almost all in one sitting, like within a day or two. Absolutely loved it. It just captures this innocence that anybody from 5 to 50 and beyond can enjoy.
Yeah.
It really is just beautifully done. And I read it in the black and white version first, which is how it was originally presented. And then I discovered the like, this is the hardback color version.
Mhm.
And I gravitated towards that and reread it in color. And I enjoyed it a little bit more in color just because it was something new for something that I had recently kind of finished and enjoyed.
Right.
And I wanted to get that same experience, but with something new in it. And the colorized version gave me that. So yeah, it was just a phenomenal read both times. And I would recommend it to anybody. If it's a child and you're trying to introduce them into reading in general, this is a great way to do it. This is a great book. And if you're looking at somebody who's more of an adult, but a little bit unsure if they like Smurfs and Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and Saturday morning cartoons, and they like long adventures, well, this could very well be it. I will say simpler art, but it's by no less
it's so expressive.
bad art. It's completely expressive. We went to one of the Baltimore Comic Cons when Jeff Smith was there, and again was very young, but I took him with me, and I don't think he'd read it at that time, or he had just read it. Boy, I can't remember now. But anyway, we were waiting in line to meet. No, he had to have read it because he wanted to meet Jeff Smith. That's what it was. He was excited to meet the guy that created this story, and I didn't even think about doing this for a kid. We get in line and we're waiting for a little bit, and we hear people saying, well, he's giving kids a free sketch. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't have a sketchbook. People in front of us that we were talking to, it was a mother and her daughter. She ripped out a page of this art book that she had brought along. And my son has this great little quick sketch of Phone Bone done by Jeff Smith from this Baltimore Comic Con. And he was absolutely enamored with it ever since then. It's just phenomenal. He was excited that he met him. It was like igniting this spark that lit up his eyes and made him thrilled to read for a long while. Now, as other things, and he's gotten older, he's gotten away from just reading in general as life gets in the way and he's told to read this or that for school. But at that time, to see him excited about something like this and then to meet the creator, that was a real experience for me. That was thrilling.
Well, Shane, again, the joy of the top five. I'm ashamed that I didn't even think of Bone. Bone is one of the greatest finite series in comics, as far as I'm concerned. And both as a parent and as a former retailer, I had a similar situation. Like both my sons read it repeatedly, not just once. And anytime anybody came into the store with younger kids, it wasn't even a question. Like, here's the first volume.
Yeah.
And it was a lock every single time.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's and this is a rare feat to write the kind of story that everybody can get something out of, just regardless of your age or your life experience. I mean, there are parts of Bone that are, looking at it as an adult, that are really, kind of chilling, and the choices some of the characters face, and especially what Thorin goes through and all of that. It's a masterpiece without question.
Yeah. And it's a perfect example, and I mean, it's been said a little bit, as Murray was talking about being World and now here with Bone. It's a perfect example of all ages, not books for kids, because there are books that are specifically for kids.
Sure.
But it's completely all ages. Anybody can pick it up and enjoy it.
Oh, yes.
And that's what I love the most about it.
And Ian, let me ask you, because you're often in the know here. For years, I've heard rumors of an animated movie or a series. Whatever happened with that? Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything about it recently. I know it occasionally comes up again as something that's in the works, but I think that may have, unfortunately, I mean, don't quote me on this, but that may have been one of the casualties of Fox getting purchased.
Okay.
Because I think it was with them, and we haven't heard anything about it since. But if I can take a look and see if there's any, updates on that, I'll be sure.
Because if it was handled right, I mean, it's tailor-made to be just an epic animated series.
Yeah.
Sure.
Certainly Disney would be the people to make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what happened to the Mouse Guard movie, isn't it? It was in development at Fox.
Yeah, it was. And they'd even started production on it. That's the worst part. And they got in a cast together. Idris Elba was going to be one of the voices in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And unfortunately got shut down after that. But it looks like there were multiple canceled films for Bones.
That's what I thought. Okay.
But Netflix does have the rights for an animated series.
Really?
Get out.
Yes. Whether or not it's going to happen, we'll see. But that was announced back in 2019.
Huh.
Okay. And as you well know, animation does take a while to make.
Mm-hmm.
So it is possible that it's still in the pipeline. So to be determined on that.
Well, let's hope so.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right, over to our number 4s. And Chris, we'll start it off with you.
The Marvel graphic novel, X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills.
Oh, that's a good one. I say it's a good one because I've heard so many good things. I don't know if I ever read it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Murda, what do you got?
Untold Tales of Spider-Man.
Yes. Okay. Shane.
I'm going to go with this because I wanted to get a Marvel book on here, and I really did enjoy this. It was a good starting point. Daredevil Visionaries. Kevin Smith's run on it.
Very good. Very good. And I thought universe spanning more than anything else. Something that could give you a good idea of not only the universe itself, but also of one of its best creators.
Hello, Chicky Pajou.
Someone answer the phone.
Beg your pardon. That's the fax machine.
One ringy
fax machine.
Two ringy is that connected to the VCR or no?
More to the teletype, my friend.
Darn. I'll wait for the ringy dingies to cease, but I may very well keep this in depending on my mood.
You gotta keep it in. Come on.
Especially if you hear the.
Oh, God. If I hear modem noise for the first time in years, that's going to be super happy. I go with DC Universe by Alan Moore.
Ooh, really good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. That's a collection of various short stories here and there.
Yes, it is. Yep, and it's been collected like 4 times, so it's definitely in print.
2 versions of it. 2 different, there's different content in each volume.
Yep. And I have the Wikipedia entry open so I can see what they think is in it, and we'll be able to see whether that's still the case. But either way, yes, go right ahead, Chris.
All right. So this is one of the easiest selections I made because most Americans and people beyond know, like, have heard of the X-Men, especially since the movies have come out, like, video games, like they're in popular media enough now that most people at least have heard of them, Wolverine and so forth. And this was not the first, but one of the first X-Men stories I ever read. I actually got Marvel did a series of graphic novels in the 80s, which were numbered. I want to say this was number 5, I think. The first one was The Death of Captain Marvel, which is a classic. And they did a whole host of them throughout the 80s. A lot of them are fantastic. And this is written by Claremont, because he is the X-Men scribe at this point. And the art is by the magnificent Brent Anderson, who, of course, you know from Astro City. And came out, I want to say, in 1982, I think. And what still resonates with me is that you can really know nothing about the X-Men and their very convoluted and continuity heavy history.
Mm-hmm.
And you can open up this story, and with a matter of a few pages, you know what the purpose of the X-Men are and the forces arrayed against them that they're fighting against. And we all remember from X-Men 2 the Stryker character, played by Brian Cox, I believe. He's from this graphic novel. Now they change him a bit, of course, but the story is basically it's the X-Men of the early 80s. So it's Cyclops, Storm, Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and Colossus, and Professor Xavier. So they're using of that time, but the story, again, you don't have to know anything about it beyond. You don't have to know anything about them, and Magneto appears in it too. But it's basically about this minister whose whole his whole ministry is based around the fear of mutant kind and trying to prevent mutant kind from flourishing further. And that's really all you need to know. That's a perfect panel to choose from.
Yeah, it's the one that I immediately think of. And for anybody who's listening via audio, it's Stryker pointing at Nightcrawler and going, "Human? You dare call that thing human?"
Yeah, perfect, Ian. Yeah. So basically, the whole premise of the X-Men, the idea that they are trying to, fighting for a world that hates and fears them, and are trying to, both defend themselves and try to break down the barriers of prejudice. This book perfectly encapsulates their whole modus operandi. So if you want to get an introduction, like before you read something like Dark Phoenix Saga, which is really in continuity, right?
Yeah.
Read this, because it's a great way to sort of get your foot in the door in the sort of the world of the X-Men, which can be very intimidating. But I haven't read it lately, but I've read it many times in my life, and it's Claremont in peak form.
Yeah,
it's all the key themes. So that's my number 4.
Plus, it was one of the first original graphic novels for Marvel, correct? Like, I know.
Here, Ian, let me do this.
Yeah.
My Marvel
here we go.
75 years hardcover.
Very good.
Yeah, which has this in it. It was one of the stories they chose.
Yeah, because it says number 5 on it. So
it's Marvel graphic novel number 5, 1982.
Yes.
Yep.
And I mean, it's just amazing that something that started something that became so prevalent afterwards, the original graphic novels, that this was only the 5th one that came out, and it became, one of the best X-Men stories ever told, and probably one of the most memorable outside of the main series.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel put it in their 75 years omnibus, so that shows that's a testament to its impact.
Absolutely. So. Yep. Mm-hmm. And if you can find it in that original oversized format too, it's gorgeous.
Oh, the original graphic novel is beautiful. If you can find a copy, it's been reprinted many times, but the original is great.
Yeah. I've read a reprint, obviously, but it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Yep. Mr. Murd.
Well, all right. Okay, so from the Merry Mutants to the Wallcrawler. Yes, okay. Untold Tales of Spider-Man.
Great choice, Murd.
It was yes, thank you, Chris. It was a product of the mid-90s. It was brought to us by the creative team of writer Kurt Busiek and artist Olive. And the idea was, it was set back in the early days of Spider-Man's career, back in what was the Silver Age. And it was kind of set in between the published issues of Amazing Spider-Man in the early years of its run. It was kind of, it wove in and out of established Silver Age continuity for the character, and told new stories in the cracks between the stories told by Stan and Steve Ditko back in those glory days. And it was being told at a time when Spider-Man's continuity was not at its best. It was right around the time of the Clone Saga. Fandom was kind of crying out for a clean, classic Spider-Man.
Oh, God, were we ever?
Yeah, that was not a reprint. And that's exactly what the creative team delivered. And it was very satisfying for all those concerned. And believe it or not, it could be had for a mere 99 cents. Cover price.
That was the best
on the newsstand, and it's what a bargain it was. It's I don't think too many people here would contradict me if I claimed that this series represented the best Spider-Man content of the 1990s.
Oh, without question.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. There were a few good things that came out in the 90s. This is definitely number one.
yeah. I mean, it's not to decry all other Spider-Man stories
of course.
There were some other quality ones here and there, but this probably the best.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and it was just a great combination of formula. It captured the spirit of those times, Spider-Man's youthful exuberance and simultaneous insecurity. The problems he was experiencing. There was some teen angst and melodrama. I still remember the introduction and subsequent demise of Avril, the Bluebird. So it was both a mix of the classic formula with a modern sensibility, just seamlessly, flawlessly melded. It captured what was great about the character in those days without seeming as, stodgy or hokey as the Lee Ditko method of storytelling would seem to young.
Well, he didn't have Ditko's objectivist screeds being imposed in it as he sometimes did.
That it did not, but it did retain some of his graphic design sense.
Sure did, which is the best part. Yep.
Oh,
They
yeah.
did a good job of allowing it to take place in a misty nether realm somewhere between the early 60s and the mid 90s. They didn't come out and say, this story takes place in 1963, or this story definitely takes place in, whatever year it would have been in the current Marvel timeline for Peter Parker if he became Spider-Man 8 years ago, regardless of what year it was, then I guess it would have been like 1988. But somewhere between 1963 and 1988 is where these stories took place, and Oliph's careful choice of say fashions and car and building designs took that into account. Yep, and Ian is now showing on screen the cover to the 21st issue of that series, guest starring the strangest teens of all, the early X-Men, the original team.
Yep, and wearing their original costumes at that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Olive Blue Beast.
Murd, I just a magnificent choice. And again, I symbolic seppuku later once more for not thinking of that book. But let me tell you, I mean, in the 90s, as you mentioned, and I was an avid. I was buying a ton of titles, in that I was in college in that time. And I was so disappointed with much of what was going on in Spider-Man. Now, the spectacular stuff, I forgot what year in the 90s that J.M. DeMatteis was doing was amazing. No pun intended. That might have been later, though. I forgot. I'm not sure.
He was on Spectacular Spider-Man twice in the course of the decade.
Okay, well, those were all great. But remember when this book came out, and as Murd mentioned, it takes place when Peter Parker is in high school. Like pretty much the whole series is him in high school. So which again, in the original series is only a couple of years. I think it's issue 28 when he graduated, the classic Molten Man cover. So this is all in between, like Murd said, in between those panels. And it was one of my early introductions to Kurt Busiek, who I still think is one of the great scribes in comics.
Yeah. And how?
Check out Astro City, for example, and Marvels and all that. But
the Marvels #1 just came out today, by the way.
Can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
So, but like Murd said, the spirit of the character, the essence of the character, it was all there. But it was fun. There was pathos, as Murd mentioned, which is so intrinsic to Spider-Man's experience. And I have a little story to share. So I went to one of the first Pittsburgh Comic-Cons I went to. Pat Olive was there.
Mm-hmm.
I got a Green Goblin sketch from him, and I bought several pages of art from this series.
All
of which were destroyed in the flood that wrecked my first store.
Right, Chris.
So I had some choice pages, including the page that introduced Mary Jane in the title.
Oh boy!
All destroyed.
Well, one thing that I love about Pat Olive's artwork, and it was prevalent here in Untold Tales, was definitely prevalent later on in Spider-Girl, is that he captures an art style that is both classic and new.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully. And that's what this series needed, because I'm glad you mentioned it, Merg, because, if we're talking about, foots in the door,
Mm-hmm.
you get to find out about the the very past of Spider-Man, while at the same time having the sensibilities of 1997. So
Yep.
it's not like ridiculously old where like you're dealing with the Stan Lee, wowee and hipsters
Hey, gang, let's go get a Coke.
exactly.
Ian, I love how much you delight in the groove talk.
Come on, man. But
Wait, you got to call someone dad. Don't forget to call someone dad.
yeah. Come on, Daddy-O. Oh my
Terrific.
God. Yeah, but still, it captures that, and so it's simultaneously classic and new, just like Olive's style. And I adored it when it came out,
Yep.
and I'm so happy that it's in print today, because it could easily be something that slipped through the cracks. But there's a Untold Tales of Spider-Man Complete Collection, Volume 1, available for pre-order right now. It will be released in November.
I have the omnibus. Is that still in print or no?
The omnibus is also still in print. However, it's coming back in print
Okay, great.
as a hardcover collection. So it will be a bit more expensive, but that's actually available on May 11th. So if you're willing to spend $100 on Amazon for it, I'm sure you can get it cheaper elsewhere if you look hard enough, or you wait until November and you get Volume 1 for $40.
Yeah, if you're a Spider-Man fan, you haven't read this series, you need to read it because it's that good.
And it is on Unlimited and on Comixology, by the way. I'll point it out also.
I know I read the first year or more of it. I don't know that I realized it went 27 plus issues. How far did it go?
Let me take a look.
It was only a couple years, right? It wasn't out that long.
Yeah, I think it lasted, let's see, Untold Tales of Spider-Man.
And I think there was a special with Doctor Strange as well, if I remember correctly.
26 issues plus two annuals and one shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess 28 total.
All right.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I loved this series when it was coming out. So it's good times. And Shane?
Okay. Well, growing up, I was very much a DC person. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum almost, and by my decor, for the most part, you can tell that. However, I always did read Spider-Man from it was like number 286 or something. It was right middle Gang War.
Yeah.
Yep. But that's not the easiest thing to just jump into. Now, I did when I was a kid, 7-Eleven, just picking something off the 7-Eleven spinner rack. So it didn't matter to me. I was just reading whatever. But to give somebody something in Spider-Man, I could not find an easy spot to do that, because that would have been my first choice. I didn't even think of Untold Spider-Man. So then I thought, well, what did I read next from Marvel that I really loved? And a lot of it came down to what Kevin Smith did in Daredevil. Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti did the art, and I loved it. I loved the way everything looked. I love the story that unfolds in this. I think it was pretty much the first Daredevil I ever read, more than just an issue here and issue there.
I think it was the first Daredevil for probably a lot of people.
Yeah.
I
love the villain in it.
Yep.
Specifically, one of my favorite, and I don't want to say it if you've never read it. But I would consider giving this to somebody if you say, and to be fair, I had Born Again right here, and Chris, you're right. This certainly isn't the easiest thing to just give somebody to read and say, hey, here, this is Daredevil, it's great. But I do think it's kind of worth it if you've watched the Netflix series, if you gravitate towards a heavier story, if you read heavier novels, you might get Born Again fairly easily.
Oh, definitely. If you've watched the Netflix series, I would definitely give someone Born Again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for somebody who doesn't know much about anything of Daredevil, I think Visionaries is better to give them for the first thing. Good self-contained kind of story, good starting point back here in the 90s when this came out.
Mhm.
I think it was the 90s. Good heavens, maybe I better check myself.
It was.
It was late 90s.
Okay. Late 90s. So at this time, I think you had Heroes Reborn was coming about. You had Marvel Knights coming out, and I read a lot of all of that. But I really think this Visionary story just was a little bit better than most of that came out at that time.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to know everything under the sun. It helped, now that I know a little bit more history about Daredevil, to reread this. Some of what he's gone through in the past does help with some of what goes on in here, but I didn't need it to read this and enjoy it. And I think here's the one issue that absolutely bawled at reading when Matt Murdock read a note that was left for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's I think it's the last issue in the story, I believe.
It could be.
Yeah.
It absolutely made me cry. It was just a fantastic read.
Yeah.
So that's my my number 4 pick. And again, I have a little bit of everything in my picks, which is kind of odd. Usually I don't. I'm very DC heavy for the most part, but this is a good melting pot of everything that I've read.
And it is a terrific foot in the door, because exactly what you said, Shane, while it's steeped in continuity, you don't need it to read it.
Yeah.
And I feel like Born Again, for all of its amazing storytelling, that is way more steeped in existing Daredevil.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
Well, and when we did Born Again, that was my first time reading it. That was fairly recent.
Yeah.
And I read it and I enjoyed it, but I got so much more out of it talking about it because I didn't know everything that came before it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yep.
And for me, I do think this is one of the better things Kevin Smith has written. Between this and Green Arrow Quiver, I think was really good.
He breathed new life into 2 characters that were desperately needing new life back at that time. Green Arrow
literally dead.
Yes, exactly. You're right. Green Arrow was literally dead. Good point. but that both of these characters were sort of languishing on the line. Like they could have very easily wound up becoming like C characters. But instead, for a while there, they were pretty much A characters at both companies, and Kevin Smith did that job and did it well. And with this, the Quesada art and Palmiotti inks, come on, Quesada and Palmiotti together, you cannot beat that team.
Yeah, there's an issue here where Spider-Man shows up and it's fantastic. The covers are great.
Yep.
There's one by J. Scott Campbell that I love.
Well, is that the Black Widow Daredevil cover where they're swinging?
Yes.
I had that as a mural in the window of my store for years.
Nice.
There's also one, I think Quesada did it, where it's Spider-Man and Daredevil on rooftop kind of looking angle.
The last issue of that story, not to give anything away for those who haven't read it, they have because Peter and Matt have had a shit for much of their history. And there's a great moment where they're talking about what has gone on. And there's just a moment where Spider-Man just says to Matt, he just says like, well, you saved that person, Matt. And like at that one moment, like he clarifies for Daredevil, like what you did was worth. I don't want to give anything away, but what you went through was basically worth it. And it really captured. I think issue 8 is actually the best scripting Smith does in the whole story because he really captures the dynamic between those characters really well.
Oh, yeah.
And I've gotten rid of a lot of my comics in general that I had over the years, but that is one issue I kept, is number 8.
And when it comes to comic book history as well, without the Marvel Knights line and without the hype that it had and the success that it had, again, this was around the time that Marvel was going through bankruptcy. Like they were recovering at this point.
That's true.
I really do not think Marvel would have recovered without books like this to make it happen. And it certainly helped that, along the lines, and really started springboarding Marvel back a little bit after some stumbling blocks. So,
Ian, all the Marvel Knights books were people were excited about. I mean, again, Priest Black Panther was a Marvel Knights book originally.
Oh, right.
You had the Marvel Knights flagship title.
Yep.
And then there was that weird Well, first, didn't that weird Punisher as an angel book, wasn't that part originally too?
It was.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
But then they brought Garth Ennis in, and he did, of course, did his whole beginning, his whole
Yes. Welcome back, Frank.
rejuvenation of the character. So great stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so over to me. And again, I wanted to try to be as universe spanning as possible on some of my picks here. And as a creator, even though he doesn't write for them anymore, some of the best stories Alan Moore ever wrote were for DC. And you know, they're perennial hits to this day. They're referenced all the darn time in works of you know, whether it be animated series, whether it be film, you know, whether it be elsewhere. And that's why I felt that this needed to be included on my list somewhere. This is the most recent cover.
Oh, wow. That's much different.
Yeah, DC Universe by Alan Moore. It is pretty much still the same collection. It's just they keep reissuing it over and over again because why wouldn't they?
That is my improvement over the Brian Boland cover that I remember seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Boland cover was a long time. They had that. In fact, actually, I think the Wikipedia entry still has that one. Let me bring that up. But what I love about this collection so much is that it really does have a little bit of everything, and that's because for a while there, you know, Alan Moore was doing a little bit of everything. When it
There's
came.
is there even a vigilante story in there, if I remember correctly?
There is, yeah.
The modern vigilante, yeah.
A Green Arrow story or two, Night Olympics, I think it was called.
Yep.
As I remember, because I did make it a point to hunt down. I think I now have every single issue that was reprinted in this.
Fabulous.
Nice. Very good. Very good. I'm trying to find a better version of the.
This is a 2003 version.
Okay.
And a 2006 version.
Nice.
There we go.
Yeah, and that's the Boland cover that I'm the most familiar with. Yes.
So the 06 has Killing Joke in it, but the later ones do not. Correct?
Let's see.
Just curious.
I think you're right. Well, going off of the Wikipedia here, just you know, reading off the stories that are in it. And again, one of the many reasons that I have it here is that it also has some, you know, some of his Green Lantern stuff. For the Man Who Has Everything is in it. Night Olympics with Klaus Janson on art from Detective Comics 549 to 550. Mogo Doesn't Socialize, one of the best Green Lantern stories of all time, period. Father's Day, originally in Vigilante, as you mentioned. They have an Omega Men story in here, Brief Lives, with art by Kevin O'Neill. A Man's World from Omega Men 27 with Paris Cullens on pencils. The Jungle Line from DC Comics Presents 85.
That's the Swamp Thing story.
You got it. Yep. And Rick Veitch on pencils. Al Williamson on inks on that. I mean, come on. Tales of the Green Lantern Corps, Tigers with a Y. Kevin O'Neill on art on that as well. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is included in full in this. Footsteps, In Blackest Night. And let's think of how much that played into you know, future stories just there. And that's from Green Lantern Corps Annual number 3 from 1987. Bill Willingham on pencils and Terry Austin on inks. Yeah. Mortal Clay, Batman Annual number 11, George Freeman on art. And of course, The Killing Joke, which is sometimes included, sometimes not. That's, you know, the amazing Brian Boland.
This version does not have The Killing Joke in it.
Okay.
But everything else you said.
Mm-hmm.
This version has The Killing Joke in it, as well as Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow 1 and 2.
Got it. Okay. So that's
which
the more
are absent from this one.
Got it. Okay. I'm looking here, and I think this one specifically says, the more recent version that I was just showing you the image of, does say that Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is included. I don't know about The Killing Joke, but either way, you're getting tons of story here, tons of history, and most of them are even one-shots. Like, that's the best part, you know? So you're just getting lore from the DC Universe that is important to the existence of the DC Universe, but also from one of the best writers in comic books, period. And you're getting a wealth of his history. and it's all there for you. So this is a collection that I would 100% say that if you're interested in the DC universe, is well worth picking up.
Great choice, Ian. Great choice.
And while I love this cover more, I like this book more. This book has more classic comic print and classic comic paper. This one's that more modern, shiny stuff that is irritating as hell to read because a light reflects off of it half through a page.
And the other thing, the other collection has, Shane, is the old school bullet.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, in the bottom corner there.
Yep.
But I'd prefer the bullet up at the top. I don't know why it's down there in the corner.
I love when Shane goes, "Get off my lawn" when it comes to these types of things.
Oh, well, I mean, to me, this kind of paper, and you can see it here reflecting in the light. It shines. It's thinner. It's horrible paper.
Oh no, I agree with you. Yeah,
that stuff.
Yep.
And this stuff smells better. This smells like a book.
I feel
it smells like plastic wrap.
They went that way specifically for digital coloring, I think, because digital colors come out better on the glossier than they do on the old school, pages. And they just didn't bother to differentiate even for the older stuff. They're just like, all right, we're going with this stock. We're going to stick with this stock. But yes, sometimes you do need that old school stock to really get the true feeling.
I was so happy when DC went back to some more traditional kind of paper in my mind in recent years for their books instead of all that shiny stuff.
Yep. Alrighty. We're onward to numero tres here. And Shane, how about you start us off?
All right. Number 3. Normally on lists, this would be higher, but I think this would be geared also for more specific people, not a general audience overall.
I know where he's going. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Starman.
And this isn't even the best thing to start out with. I mean, I love the first volume, either the trade or the omnibus here. Yeah. But it's not the best. You read this and you get better with the next volumes. And the payoff is through the entire series. But this is a great starting point. Yeah.
All right. My number 3. And this is the series. And I love it for everything that it is, especially if you're a fan of other medium. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay. Very good choice.
And Chris.
Batman Year One.
Excellent.
Oh, nice.
It was almost on my list, sir. It was almost on my list.
Yeah, mine too.
It was on yours. And Murd.
The Books of Magic.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
Murd. Nice.
Very good. Yep. All right, Shane. Wax poetic.
So I've told this story before. I got into reading Starman because I picked up an issue to make a Halloween costume inexpensively. There's a cover where it shows Jack Knight in his black coat with the symbol on the back, so I could trace out and cut out of felt, paste onto my back of this black jacket I had. And that was my Halloween costume because it was easy and inexpensive. And it looked good. And then I read the issue. And then I was curious. And then I went before a little bit. And then I went after. And then I sought out back issues. And then I was hooked. And I was hooked until the very end. This came out in 94 with number 0 issue after 0 hour. It was a good jumping on point for a new part of the DC universe after 0 hour. It had some legacy to it, being the son of the original Starman Ted Knight, but you really didn't need to know much of any of that. And anything you do need to know about the history is explained here because James Robinson weaves tales in here that didn't necessarily take place in original DC continuity, but make sense in the new history, and it's retconned into everything. Some of the stuff is here, but it's much more James Robinson's imagination that gives you everything you need to know about Starman, Jack Knight, and everything surrounding his family, his cast of characters. It is one of the best finite series I have ever read in my entire life.
Without question.
There's one volume of work that I have to take with me to go on a desert island this is what I'm grabbing first, is all 6 volumes of this, and the Shade series that came out after it. There's no greater enjoyment that I get out of reading a book other than Justice League, which is a whole nother beast of my favorite, but there's no other joy of watching a character grow into his heroship, into his family that he had as far as his father and brother goes, as well as his family to come and the people that become his family that surround him through this entire tale.
Yep.
It is an epic tale from start to finish. You get some DC history in it overall, but you don't need, you're introduced to some characters that are in the DC universe, and you don't really need to know who they are. I mean, of course, like anything else, it helps if you do, and you get some more enjoyment out of it. But if you just read this and they're introduced, they're fully part of the story. You don't need anything else about it because they play an important role in this in some capacity.
And Shane, to piggyback, I think one of the great achievements of Starman, and there are many, is that it makes you want to learn more about the history of the DC universe, because Robinson so masterfully weaves in all this retro continuity, so many golden age concepts and characters. I mean, who's the sheriff from the past?
Scalp Hunter.
Yeah, Scalp Hunter.
Yeah.
Scalp, all that whole thing is amazing. And we're going to talk more about Starman down the road at some point.
Yes, we are.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
And you get into the Adair family. You get into
but,
Jack's relationships. You get into what happens to him.
It's one of those, because again, it's the joy of a finite series, because you get, as you said, you get to see this character go on this arc and develop like a real person, and his foibles, his misconceptions, his experiences, the mistakes he makes.
And
it's an incredible achievement.
He's not perfect. He makes tons of mistakes, and he has tons of tragedy that happen.
Yeah.
And then there's great triumph. There's great pride. There's great accomplishment in here as well. This is another thing. You get to issue 73 of this book, and I cry like a baby. It's my favorite issue. My favorite single issue in all of comics is number 73. Fantastic. I have a page from it. I was lucky enough to acquire a great
really
from it. Yeah,
you got a Tony Harris page.
I do. No. It's not Tony Harris. It's Peter.
Oh, okay.
Nybear. I think he was doing it at that point.
Right. Yep. Gotcha.
But still, epic page.
Shane, I forget if I told you this, but I started with Starman on its last volume.
Oh wow!
I read, back before they came out with the Omnibuy or omnibuses. They released the soft covers.
Oh sure.
I just randomly picked up the soft cover off the shelf one day. I think it was at Midtown Comics, and I'm like, all right, this looks good, because I was into JSA at the time. I wanted to know how Stargirl got her staff.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and picked it up, and I read that last volume. For a while, that was the only Starman I read until the omnibuses started being released. Wow. And then I went ahead and picked them all up as they were released, and I'm so happy I did, because it's stupendous.
Well, and the thing about the way this is packaged now, it was 81 issues monthly.
Yeah.
And then it had the trades. Mm-hmm. The trades were fine, but they left certain things out. They gathered things, because intermixed with the entire series, you have your Times Past tales, which gives you some history, and you have your Talking with David tales, and they do fit and serve a purpose in the story where they are. But for the purposes of trading, they kind of pull them all out and put them other places. So you get the story arc in a trade, but it's not as fluid as what the omnibus came out with. To me, this is the perfect size omnibus.
Mm-hmm.
It's not super thick. It's not breaking my lap when I read it. Fantastic. I would much rather have 6 volumes of this than one huge thing. I mean, I like them. I have a couple. I have a few. But rather than the big thing that just is almost impossible to carry with you or read, I would much rather have these. And I started ordering these right off the bat. I have all 6 in this nice hardcover. In the hardback, number 2 and 3, I think, are really hard to get. And in the trade paperback, I don't think they ever finished them.
They didn't finish them.
Trade
Yeah.
omnibus, which is
No, they
a
didn't.
tragedy.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Yeah, because I mean, they came out with all the hardcovers,
Yes.
and then I guess the soft covers weren't selling enough to continue releasing them. Which,
yeah,
if you start releasing them, just finish releasing them. Come on, you know. But
the only thing that happened worse than that was the Justice League Giffen de Mateus era was releasing new hardbacks at some point, and they got to like volume 4, and then they went to trades. Okay, so you have the first like 4 volumes in hardback and 5, 6, and 7, whatever came after in trades. Drove me nuts. But
you know, Shane, next time we bring up JLA, I have to have crackers. I mean, I won't crap on them obviously because that would be terribly inappropriate. But you know, we got to carry on with that theme.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. And one of my favorite parts about those omnibuses is that they even include the Hellboy crossover.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yep.
There's something else in there too that's special. I forget what.
Well, they even included the Blackest Night issue.
Maybe that's it. Maybe
yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, because that happened years later, and it just happened to be coming out at the right time, where the final volume includes that.
And for people watching, you have the nice dust jacket, right?
Yes.
But you also have an
Yep.
text cover for the hardback. It's beautiful.
I love it. All right, over to Scott Pilgrim. Now, this is a very special book for me. I mean, I was already reading comics when I read Scott Pilgrim, but when I picked up the first volume for this, I think at that time already, I think 3 or 4 of them had come out, and I was immediately hooked. Because for anybody who's a fan of video games, and anybody who's a fan of comic books, or anybody who's even like looking to get in the front door on comic books, this is great for that, because it really does stretch both mediums really, really well. You know, this is clearly a book made for fans of, you know, the Street Fighter world, or even like the old school beat 'em ups or what have you. But it's also just genuinely fun and enjoyable, and anybody who's seen the movie would love to read the comic book, because they take a lot of it for the movie, but there's also some subtle differences when you actually go ahead and read the original text. The ending's completely different, but that's because the ending literally came out after the movie, so that makes sense. You know, it's a Game of Thrones situation. Like, I'm sure, you know, 45 years from now, when we finish Game of Thrones, it'll be completely different than the series was. But I love the artwork. It's simplistic and stylized, but it gets the job done. And that's something that Brian Lee O'Malley has in spades. And also just the story that it's telling. It's kind of like a true love tale with also like is this really true love, or have I been thrown into this? Obviously, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Scott is on a quest to deal with Ramona Flower's 7 evil exes. And he has to deal with them as the volumes move forward. His bandmate's name is literally Steven Stills. I laugh at that every single time. You know,
while Neil hanging around.
Yes, there's a young Neil hanging around. Good
Neil
point.
Young, but young Neil.
Exactly. And also, you know, Wallace, his gay roommate, is the best character in the entire thing, because he's just sarcastic as heck, and I love that type of humor. Really, it's just, you know, the same way that Shane was saying, you know, talk about, you know, contained stories. This is a lovely contained story, and once you're done reading it, you're done reading it, and that's it. They've put out newer editions of this, both in hardcover and softcover, that are now color. So anybody who does actually prefer color over black and white, you can see what Brian Lee O'Malley did with that. He was involved with the production, so it wasn't just a cash grab like some color editions are. This was, you know, done from the ground up to try to make it, you know, new and relevant all over again. And really, it's one of my favorite series, and I think it will be many other people's favorite series, especially those trying to get into comic books. So that's why Scott Pilgrim is on my list.
I'll have to give that another chance. I only read, I think, the first volume or 2 that we did. Did we do that as a Book of the Month Club long time ago?
I'm pretty sure we did, yeah.
I've never watched the movie.
Movie's a lot of fun.
Oh, you would love the movie. And Shane, you know, once you're all set, well, no, you are all set. They're actually re-releasing at the theaters. They're
really?
doing Adobe re-release, so like with a brand new soundtrack and everything, booming sound to theaters. I think within the next month or two to celebrate.
Oh, terrific!
Yep. So that might be your time. Yep.
But yeah, I'll have to give that another chance. I just wasn't into it back then, but I keep hearing so many good things over the years. I'm pretty sure Peter loves it.
He does. I know he does.
I really should give it a chance.
Yes, and for that matter, so do I. Because I remember we did our book of the month episode, and I was taken by it, and I did read all 6 volumes. I can remember I was reading it on the ferry back to Stone Harbor from Matt's wedding. So
wow.
That's how long ago that was. That's
Wow.
at least 10 years ago.
Yeah.
His oldest daughter's 8 now.
You got it.
But yeah, it's just, as Ian said, it's a great fusion of the conventions of the comics medium, the gaming medium, and I'd throw even the music medium in there.
Good point.
Well, yeah, because a lot of it has to do with his membership, Scott's membership in a band, and there's a lot of musical numbers, even in the comic, which translates very effectively to the movie, of course.
Yep.
But it's kind of like it's using the conventions of all those things, music and gaming and comics, to create kind of this valorous narrative of Scott Pilgrim's attempt to striving through the challenges of his young mid-20s life to overcome his own immaturity and grow up a little bit as he goes through these different boss levels to defeat the evil exes of his would-be girlfriend Ramona Flowers. And as he meets each challenge and collects each power-up, if you will, he gets a little bit closer to being an actual, honest to goodness, mature adult. So it'll appeal to anybody who's a fan of music, of video gaming, of comics, and or anyone who's ever been a know-nothing 20-something lunkhead but got better. So it's relatable to a lot of people in a lot of ways. So it is a very good choice, Ian, for the purposes of this list.
Merd, if every product was lucky enough to have you extol it, they would sell so many copies of it. Man, no one does it better.
Meanwhile, back in the archives, episode 894 of Comic Geek Speak.
Way back.
Book of the Month Club, Scott Pilgrim Volumes 1 and 2, July 30th, 2010.
Wow.
And
when I thought.
And to further prove how many episodes you guys were putting out back then, it was episode 907. So let's think about that. 894 to 907, August 18th, 2010. Scott Pilgrim versus the World Movie Review.
Wow.
That's a decent amount of episodes
in like 2 weeks, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Job well done all around on that one. But yeah, if you want to go back into the archives and check out what the geeks thought of volume 1 and 2, do that on episode 894. All right, moving forward. Who was next in the queue?
I think it's my turn.
Go right ahead.
Yes. So this is an easy selection. Everyone in the world knows who Batman is. Probably one of the most recognizable, pop culture figures, like besides like Superman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman. Mickey
He's right
Mouse.
behind you, Shane. He's right behind you.
Yes, in many ways.
He's giving you the bunny ears.
There's a whole down that way. There's a whole shelf of Batman figures.
And I was thinking about, okay, what story encapsulates the essence of myth? Because I think of Batman, I think of myth. I think he's one of the most mythical characters in comics. There's just everything.
Was somebody talking about me?
Folks, if you can't see us, Shane is thrusting his 1970s gray and blue Batman garb figure into the camp.
The Neil Adams hairy-chested love god. Batman.
Yes.
This is a DC Mattel superhero classics thing.
Nice.
Gotta forget the title.
So we've talked about this book many times in the air. I mean, it's done by the team that created Born Again, Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. And when I think about, again, what is at the core of the Batman myth, I think it's captured in this story. Miller and Mazzucchelli take all the classic elements of Batman and sort of reintroduce them with sort of a grittier edge. This was done in the 1980s, but all the key elements are there. It's a story that still gives me chills I mean, when he infiltrates the mansion where all of the corrupt politicians are having the dinner party, and he takes the cover for the dinner and he puts it down and extinguishes the flame, and then there's just darkness in the room. I'm like, I mean, that one scene alone. There's a ton of scenes like that in the whole story. Like there's just almost every page is basically a scene like that. It is the core of what makes that character so captivating and so mythic. And when you think about Batman Begins, which that movie doesn't exist without this story, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Right down to him summoning the bats with a sonic device, for example. Yep. I think anyone who's interested in Batman, who's enjoyed Batman and other media, as many people have, just hand them this, and then they'll fully understand just why this character. I mean, I want to say there was one poll who was voted like the most popular, I think, superhero of the 20th century or something like that. Everything is here in this. Was it 4 issues, Shane?
Yeah,
was it 4 issues? Because it was in the regular Batman title.
Yeah, 406, 410.
It started. Part 1 was 404.
404.
Yep.
Okay.
The reason that I bring that up, by the way, is so I can share this image, because literally everything since this image has happened has mimicked this image.
Yeah.
And that is the cover to Batman 404 with Batman's parents dead in the alley and Bruce standing over them.
And again,
every single Batman thing has mimicked this.
One of the great artists that we've extolled endlessly on this show. I mean, from Born Again, and to me, this is the other great. Like when Shane talks about what do you bring on a desert island, I bring Born Again. I bring this.
Oh yeah,
because I mean, this is one of my all-time favorite creative teams. This artist, I mean, his sense of layout, of design, his expressiveness, which he does often with very simple renderings, and then look at his later work like Asterios Polyp. Anybody read that?
Oh yeah,
that Mazzucchelli did, which is tremendous.
Yep.
Totally different style.
Oh yeah.
That's done many years later, but that's a whole nother discussion. But again, if I want to give new readers something that they're familiar with, they know who Batman is, but they don't really know Batman the way a seasoned comic reader knows that character.
Yeah. This
is the book you give them. Not Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
You give them this.
And thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. Because Dark Knight Returns, again, I would say is a medium to fully integrated book. Like if you're familiar with the character, go ahead and read The Dark Knight Returns. But
exactly
here you're literally getting the beginnings of the character, and that's why I go there for a beginning book. Definitely.
And what's great is that like most people, like they've heard of Catwoman, right? They've heard of Commissioner Gordon, right? They're familiar with these characters in some way or shape or form from a multitude of media they've all appeared in. Yep. And Miller and Mazzucchelli just perfectly capture each of those characters and sort of their beginnings as they imagine them. And this, I mean, in many ways, year one is as much about Jim Gordon as it is about Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And to me, it's still probably the greatest Jim Gordon story put to page, basically. And like when he deals with the consequences of infidelity, like this is a gripping and in many ways really brutal story. But last point I'll make, I know Shane will especially appreciate this. They also show you Batman in the beginning struggling.
Yeah.
Like when the one hood like puts the air conditioner on his head or the TV, he's falling off the balcony, like the fire escape. And and Batman Begins, they even kind of did that scene too, when he goes to Gordon's office and just read it.
and the animated movie, by the way, with Bryan Cranston.
Oh, wonderful.
Gordon,
oh yeah.
Like
Cranston is perfect.
Yep.
Cranston's Gordon, isn't he?
He is, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's narrating. It's perfect. Yep.
And
definitely
all of that, 4 issues. 4 regular comic issues. Not stuff, not bonus books, not annuals. 4 issues.
Yeah. And that's why this medium works, is that you can tell a story like that in 4 issues. It's great. Yep.
I have a very special, and I know I've told this story on the show in the last year or two, that my dad was shopping at a farmer's market, Quakertown farmer's market. They had a comic book stand, and I had seen it before, stopped in it, whatever, we were there. But him and my mom were there by themselves. And for my birthday, he gave me a present, just kind of all by himself, pulled it out of his bedroom. Here, happy birthday. I opened it up, and it's a hardback version of that. Probably the very first hardback version of year one. And I didn't get trade paperbacks or anything back then. That was almost unheard of back in that time. So this is definitely the mid to late 80s. But it really touched me that he thought that I would like it because it was Batman, and it was something that looked special to him that he wanted me to have. So
that's great. That's excellent. And Murd, over to you.
All right. Time for some magic. All right. Yes, the miniseries here, the 4-issue miniseries, The Books of Magic, minor masterpiece. It was published circa 1990-91. I read it for the first time when I was in college on a spring break concert tour with the Penn State Glee Club. It was something to read on the bus. And it was 4 oversized issues, each one with a different artist, but all written by the master Neil Gaiman.
Right.
And issue 1 was drawn by John Bowman, or painted by John Bolton, I should say. Issue 2, art by Scott Hampton. Issue 3, Charles Vess. Issue 4, Paul Johnson. And it follows the adventures of a young boy named Tim Hunter, who learns that he is destined to be a sort of magical messiah. And he is visited by 4 different well-known DC Universe figures, 4 psychopomps of his, 4 spirit guides, collectively known as the Trenchcoat Brigade in the years to come. Phantom Stranger, John Constantine, Dr. Occult, and Mr. E. And one at a time, Ebenezer Scrooge style, they lead him through different time periods and different aspects of magic, all the sorcerous realms and just the dimensions of fantasy that exist within the DC universe and its, by then, 55-year-long history. So it revisits all these venerable old DC universe magical concepts, but puts a completely new coat of paint on them, and Neil Gaiman really goes to town presenting them in creative new lights. There's one point where Tim consults with the ghost of John Zatara, Master Magician, and the story just bursts into free verse at that point. It's like a whole page of just Zatara waxing poetic about his own anonymic magical spells, how he write backwards, talking backwards, thinking backwards. It's I'm not quoting exactly, but it's still it's just immensely creative views of some of these old concepts. Everything from like the ancient Atlantis to the 64th century home of Abracadabra, the magical foe of the Flash. It's Neil Gaiman leaves no stone unturned as far as investigating all the different magical concepts that DC had to offer at that time. And it's just a great little walk through these specific dark, shadowy corners of the DC lore, but seen with fresh eyes. Not only Gaiman's, but also Tim Hunter's, our point of access character. Which makes the whole thing very relatable for new readers. Certainly more so than the other best-known Neil Gaiman opus of that period, Sandman, which I thought about putting on this list. It's on my alternates list, but it's just it's a bit less impenetrable. It's a bit less arty and pretentious. It's a sort of thing that the layman could pick up and read easily. And the number one reason, though, why I chose to put this on my top 5 list here is because it's basically Harry Potter when you come down to it. It's it's about this kid who's destined to be the chosen one in this hidden realm of magic, who is learning about it for the first time himself as he's coming of age, and he looks like Harry from right down to the glasses and the pet owl. It's the similarities are uncanny. So anybody out there who has read and enjoyed the Harry Potter books, and there are many such people out there who are curious about getting into comic books, this would be a great entry for them, I think. And it was followed by an ongoing series that eventually was published under the Vertigo banner. But this first 4-volume miniseries, I think, is the best. It originated Tim Hunter's saga, and it shows you the best that DC's magic and fantasy titles had to offer at that time.
Yep.
And I think it's a good gateway for Harry Potter fans into the DC universe. So, and it's just a damn good story in its own right.
Great choice, Mar. It's a wonderful book. Great choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did Books of Magic come out before Harry Potter?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
It did. It did. And I mean, those of you watching the video right now, I put a comparison shot up there of what a volume of Books of Magic looks like, and comparing it to Harry Potter. They are very similar. I'm sure it's a coincidence.
Yeah, I'm certainly not accusing you, J.K. Rowling, of plagiarism.
No. It's just fascinating to me how sometimes such similar concepts can come out in not that far of a distance, but at the same time, from all the stories that J.K. Rowling has told, and I do believe her, is that this was something that was stirring for years.
Oh, sure.
For years, and it just happened to come out when it did.
Yeah.
And same with Gaiman's books of Magic. It's just similar yet parallel ideas and concepts.
Yep, happens time and time again in
Swamp Thing and Man Thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. X-Men and Doom Patrol.
Yep. Dante's Peak and
Volcano.
Yes.
Well, we just took a real dip there, Ian.
Yeah.
Well, I was also thinking, what was it, Armageddon and there was Deep Impact.
Deep Impact. Yep.
Deep Impact.
Yep.
A terrible title. Deep Impact. So awful.
Oh boy.
In my opinion, though, it was a better movie than Armageddon was.
Well, there you go. It didn't have nearly as much Steven Tyler soundtrack though. But excellent choice, Murd, and again another one where if you're a fan of blank, you might like blank. Actually, really works in this favor. So that's very well done there. Yep. All right, let's head over to our number twos. I'll start us off here. I'm gonna go back to the Busiek well. Ooh. Because of all the people that can get people into comic books, it is Kurt Busiek, and specifically his Avengers Assemble Volume 1. Kurt Busiek and George Perez is an excellent place to start.
It is.
And that is my number two.
Magnificent, Ian.
Murd.
I'm going Fables.
Well done.
Ooh, that's on my alternates.
Yep, same here. On my alternates as well. Shane?
I'm going to go with Justice League: A New Beginning.
This is my surprised face.
I almost went with this for number one, but I think I have something better for number one.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so
let me give mine.
Oh, yes, please, Chris, go right ahead.
I'm perfectly forgettable. I understand. Believe me.
No, please.
Well, Ian, hold on a second. You've known me long enough to know by now that you should know that one of my key roles in life is to act as a muse so that you can lovingly abuse me. So take advantage of it.
Absolutely. That was my fault for being distracted looking up a cover for my thing rather than paying attention to who is next. But please, by all means.
All right. So
Chris's superpower.
This is the one single issue in my top 5.
Okay.
It's from Amazing Spider-Man issue 248. Roger Stern, Ron Friends, the kid who collects Spider-Man.
Oh,
excellent. Hats off to you, sir.
And when you get there, I will point out something that recently came out that you are probably not familiar with, and you should definitely check it out. But anyway.
Excited.
All right, so here we go. Kurt Busiek is one of the best writers in comics, period.
Absolutely.
And I could have very easily gone with any of his works here.
So good. God.
But you want to talk about a series that easily encapsulates everything that I love about the Avengers in one book. That is Busiek's run on the title.
Look at that cover.
It's gorgeous. And I mean, George Perez himself, you can't get better than that. Yeah. There were tons of wraparound covers when it first came out as well, where you got to see as many Avengers as he could possibly draw.
Machine Man.
Yep. Exactly. You've got, I think that's Rick Jones in a Professor X-esque chair in the background there. But this was coming off of a dark time in Marvel Comics.
Right. A dark time called Heroes Reborn.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And rather than worry about too much of, what happened before, Kurt Busiek decided to focus on what worked. And
sure did.
And what's always worked about the Avengers is the team aspect. and the way they interact with each other, and the fact that you could sometimes have 8 Avengers and sometimes you could have 200 Avengers because there have been that many over the years. And if you want to get to know as many Avengers as you can possibly fit under a hat, you will do that in Kurt Busiek's run, and especially in this first volume. Because, yeah, it was a reset and it was a restart, but it was done in all the right ways in that fashion. And you don't feel any of that, like, we're throwing as many people as possible into this because we can experience, because he's doing it because of pure love of comics and also pure love of Marvel comics and the history of the Avengers. But also, when somebody shows up, it's like, oh, hey, it's Machine Man. Okay, it's Machine Man. Cool. Rather than Machine Man first appeared in issue number 147. Blah, 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 blah. You know, like, no, that's not necessary here. It's that they need Machine Man in this moment. Machine Man is there. Machine Man's going to help out. You had one of my favorite Avengers villains, Morgan Le Fay, showing up in early issues of this and completely warping reality.
She's the villain driving the first arc.
You got it. Yep. Yeah. And it's some of the best reality warping adventures that I've seen, you know, where they all wind up in like an alternate reality setting, essentially, of like medieval Avengers with like a whole.
It's like in the Marvel version of the Arthurian world, essentially.
Exactly. And I love the look that they gave Thor for that and all these other things, but again, it's all part of the story. And I love it to this day. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Avengers run, period. And I guarantee you, whether you're steeped in the lore or not, whether you know what's going on or not, you will be able to pick this book up and you will be able to enjoy it. It's in print. It's also on Comixology, and it's also in Marvel Unlimited. Read it. It's well worth it.
Not only that, yeah, and especially because much of the world has seen the Avengers films, and those movies, when they're at their best, really, as you were saying, really capture the comradeship between the characters and the history. And these comics do that, issue after issue, because again, like you said, Busiek is so reverent towards the history of the Avengers, which is extensive. Yeah. And it's all there in these stories. And as you get into this run, which is a classic run, the Ultron story is one of the greatest Avengers stories ever put to page.
So good. It's so good.
And Avengers 2 is basically based on that story, the second Avengers film.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called Ultron Unlimited. And it is Ultron at that concept at its most terrifying.
Yep.
So great stuff.
And if you do happen to have trouble finding the first volume, because yes, my statement of it being in print may not 100% be true. I guarantee you they're gonna reissue it sooner than later. But it is available for anybody who has Comixology Unlimited. It is part of the Comixology Unlimited program as well. So even if you don't have Marvel Unlimited, you can just go ahead and get that digitally, and you can read it for free. And it's all included in that, but also again on Marvel Unlimited and Comixology and like tons of other places. So it's so worth the read. And anybody who wants to know more about the Avengers after the movies, this is the place to go.
Yeah, I think that series, when it started, was the longest run of Avengers that I read. Like, I would read an issue here or there in different iterations, but that Busiek and George Perez run, that was just epic for me.
And like Ian said, it was like I needed like oxygen after that Heroes Reborn crap. And when this book came out, I was like, oh, this is it. Like this is how it's done.
Yeah.
These are the characters I love.
Yep.
Done by, two masters. Like what a team, like a creative team on this book.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
And JLA Avengers also.
Yes.
It made my alternates, but I couldn't include it because it's so hard to find. And that's kind of the worst.
Is that out of print as a trade, JLA Avengers?
It is, yes. Yeah.
It is.
Wow.
Okay. Copyright complications, I'm sure, something.
Is there? Okay.
Oh yeah, because shockingly, DC and Marvel don't talk very much. Like that and Amalgam are almost impossible to find these days. Luckily, I already have Amalgam, but I don't have JLA Avengers. I'm waiting for it to be cheap on eBay, and I'll go ahead and grab it. But that's unfortunately the case.
Glad I have my absolutish kind of version of JLA Avengers. Then I didn't realize it was that hard.
Yep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So Shane, I believe it's you.
All right, I know with this pick I'm a little predictable. Well, with most of my picks I'm a little predictable, but this
Shane, it's
book,
comforting like a beloved blanket.
this book just screams fun. Um, if you know Batman and even Captain Marvel, Shazam, you can kind of jump in on this. Um, this first volume, issue 1 through 6, I think it is, it's the beginning of the story. It's not the beginning of the Justice League, but you don't need to know everything that came before it. You just need to know that this is the new Justice League and here's the beginning of their story, and you're off and running. It's fantastic artwork. It's great fun writing. It's a little bit more serious in this first volume. It gets a little bit goofier later before it kind of gets even worse down the road, but that's far down the road. That's like, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the road before it gets a little bit iffy for me.
Serious worse or goofier worse?
Goofier worse. Like, I just didn't appreciate the stories. I still read it all and I still love it, but I think the first 75 or 80 issues of this run are better than the last 20 some that are left. They're not terrible, but I prefer, especially the first 3 or 4 years of this book is phenomenal for me. I got this book because I liked Batman and because it was a team book. And I always, just like Jamie would always say, I like team books because you get more bang for your buck. You get more characters in every issue for the same price as a Batman book or a Superman book or a Daredevil book, whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I really, really love a team book. And this one throws in a little bit of humor, a little bit of goofiness with it, but it still tells great stories. It still has this expressive art by Kevin McGuire that I don't think is matched in some other ways by other artists. There's great artists out there, but there's something about the way he draws these expressions and conveys this emotion through these characters that I think is pretty hard to match. I remember getting, I think it was issues 5 or 6 and maybe the first annual. Those were the first issues I picked up, and it was in Ocean City, New Jersey on vacation as a kid. And then I went back and got issues 1 through 4 or whatever, and then kept going with it from there. We were looking for something to do at the beach, and my mom and dad took us to a Five and Dime in Ocean City, New Jersey, and said, "Here, pick out something you want to do." And I picked out a couple comic books off the rack. I was not really heavily collecting comics. I was getting G.I. Joe at that time, and that was about it. This really was the impetus of me starting to collect comics as a hobby, as something I grew into very quickly. This gave me a gateway to multiple characters that I wanted to learn more about. This crossed over with other books and had, even though it isn't remembered. Well, I shouldn't say that. I always enjoyed it, but it was my first big crossover. It crossed over with Millennium, which did not end very well, but I still appreciated my excitement for something company-wide and massive because it was a gateway for me into the entire DC universe. This book started all that. So when somebody comes to me and says, "Well, what do you have that would be kind of fun, something that's not too serious but still can be serious and an enjoyable story," this is where I go.
Oh yeah.
I have the issues, I have hardbacks, I've got 3 versions of this. Every time I would go to a con, if I'd see this in a $5 bin or a $2 bin, beat up trade paperback, I'd buy it and give it to somebody or buy it so the kids can thumb through it. Whatever. This is always out there in print somewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, the cover that I have up is, easily one of the most iconic covers.
Yeah. And has been replicated over and over.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's just something that just like it oozes attitude, but at the same time tells you that you're about to read something different. And I love that.
That version, that's the first trade paperback that came out. 1987, 88. 89 rather. It says 89, I think. Yeah. 1989. Wow.
And it's been constantly in print ever since, really. I mean,
pretty much, yeah.
One or another. And something that I love telling, new readers is that there's more than just Superman. There's more than just, your standard characters. And that's something that Justice League International 100% shows you, is that there's more than just the standard 7.
It takes years to get up to a Justice League Spectacular special, which reintroduces Superman and Wonder Woman into this Justice League mix for the most part. Before that, it's Batman and a lot of secondary characters at that time that really do come to the forefront in a lot of ways. This is where Booster and Beetle, if you're going to read Blue and Gold in the DC universe, this book right here is where their buddy friendship starts.
Yeah.
Is laid out in issue 4 and beyond in this.
Yep. Excellent choice. Excellent choice. Even if it's always your choice. Excellent.
Yeah, I know. I can't help it.
Nice to know some things are consistent in this universe.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Yep.
My love of that book and Starman are two of them.
Definitely. All right, Murd.
Okay, so Fables. Yeah, this is a gateway comic for a lot of people, I think. For those of you out there who have not read Fables, but did watch or at least were aware of that show Once Upon a Time that was on ABC a while ago, Fables is basically that, but better, and not as concerned with whoring for various Disney properties. With apologies to the Benson sisters, Julie and Shauna, who I know did work on Once Upon a Time for a time there. I'm sure that the show's degeneration into Disney shilling was not of your doing. But yeah, so the premise with Fables is that somewhere in New York City there is a little expatriate ethnic neighborhood known to its residents as Fabletown. It's located on Bullfinch Street, and it's basically in just like a little block or two of dwellings and businesses that are run by expatriate fairy tale characters, people who have fled from their various realms and dimensions. Apparently, there's a whole multiverse where the products of different cultures, folklore, and legends dwell and have an actual existence. But they were all forced to flee their homes as they were one by one overrun by the hordes of a mysterious adversary that sets about conquering all the Fablelands. And this adversary is a well-known fairy tale figure, the identity of which I will not reveal here because it's not who you'd expect. But anyway, so the series opens with these characters trying to live their lives in this little neighborhood in New York City. So they're trying to get along with one another, or they're trying to get along with a city of a couple million Mundies that cannot know their true nature as living, breathing, flesh and blood fairy tale characters living among them. They have to deal with political issues such as the exile of certain fables who are not human enough to pass for human, and all the little talking animals and things that figure in so many different fairy tales. They have to be exiled to an upstate compound called The Farm, and they're not that happy about that situation. So there's all kinds of political maneuvering. There's edge and there's intrigue and there's character conflict. There's a murder mystery almost right off the bat in the very first story, and there's just so many colorful, wonderful characters. So just who are as familiar as childhood nursery rhymes, but as fresh and gripping as today's headlines. It's a cast of characters that everyone reading this will likely know in some way or other. Snow White, the Big Bad Wolf, Cinderella, Old King Cole, Sinbad, and the list goes on. Little Boy Blue, and on and on and on. And it's just everybody on some basic level knows these characters, and so it's easy to just take hold of what they know about the characters and from there appreciate the brilliant interpretations to which creators Bill Willingham, Mark Buckingham, and company subject these characters. So it's something that anybody who's been a part of Western civilization for any length of time can pick up and enjoy right off the bat. If you just know your fairy tales and your nursery rhymes, you know the basic cast of characters, and Willingham takes you on a great ride from there. And eventually things escalate to a crescendo as their adversary figures out where all these fables have escaped to and attempts to infiltrate Fabletown and conquer that as well. And then the fables take up arms and bring the battle back to the adversary in the Fablelands. And it went on for a great many issues, many trade volumes. I never actually finished because
I haven't finished it either. Yeah.
No, neither have I. I still have quite a few volumes to read.
Yeah, my reason was that my tradition had been every spring, every free comic book day, I would attend the annual Wild Pig sale, and I would buy another volume of Fables from Chris. But when the Wild Pig sales ran out, so did my excuses and opportunities to buy further volumes of Fables. So, alas.
Murd, you can still buy those subsequent volumes, though.
I could. I'm sure I could. I could just go over to Amazon.com.
Get there. He'll get there. Yeah.
It was so much more fun to buy them from you.
I appreciate that, my friend. And let me
150 issues, by the way. I just wanted.
That's a lot, and I think it's generally agreed that it went on for a little bit longer than it should have. It kind of jumped the shark somewhere along the way. It spun itself off a few too many times.
Yeah.
But for a while there, for the first couple of years, it was one of the most interesting series going.
Well, what Murd described, like basically the political intrigue, which is really sophisticated in the storytelling, but they really go into the political dynamic and the social dynamic, like you mentioned, the farm of this community and you know the various characters and their agendas, and then there's the focus on the war is really that's the core of the whole story.
Yep.
And I read, and it's gripping. And I read through all that till the revelation of who the adversary is. But I remember I don't remember why, but I kind of dropped off after that. So I definitely have to finish it out.
I want to point out 13 years of comic books right there, from June 2002 until July 2002 until July 2015. This book was running.
Wow.
That's how long it took. And yeah, that's 150 issues, but it's also one of the most easily accessible comics in the library system. So do keep that in mind. If you're looking to read comics and you're wondering, where am I going to, commit to this? I'm like, I won't guarantee it'll be in your library system, but I'm pretty sure it
probably will be.
Yeah, because DC did a very good job of promoting this. And there's also the Wolf Among Us video game, which is superb.
I didn't realize there was a video game.
Yeah, it's a Telltale video game. The same guys who did the Walking Dead video game and Guardians of the Galaxy, a Batman one, and so on and so forth. But
right.
It's set shortly before the events of Volume 1.
Huh.
And it does a really good job. And there's a second one that's going to be coming out soon. So really worth your time.
Is there any talk of other media for Fables, Ian, besides the video game?
There was Once Upon a Time until Once Upon a Time came out, and then that essentially killed it. All
right.
Which is why to this day people comment, originally Once Upon a Time Fables was set with ABC for a pilot, and then they passed on it, and then Once Upon a Time came out. And to be fair, they are different. Like, I'm not saying they're 100% the same, because I watched a decent amount of Once Upon a Time, and I actually liked it for the first couple of seasons until I felt like it got a little, like you were saying, Murd. But you can't tell me that there wasn't at least an influence in that. Heck, I even thought when Grimm was coming out initially that was going to be a ripoff, but that's also its own thing, very much so. Nothing about a Fables TV show nor movie, and I don't actually think I would like to see one, to be entirely honest with you.
Not a movie.
If we saw it, I'd rather see it as a long series. I don't think a movie would do it justice at all.
Yeah. Yep.
The other great thing about Fables is how he took all of these, these fairy tale archetypes that we all know well, and then he molded them into like modern, sort of modern characters. Like the Big Bad Wolf is like the trench coat wearing, like, private investigator, basically.
Yep. Snow White became a secret agent.
Yes. Snow White's like the savvy, like like business leader, essentially.
Straight out of the West Wing.
Yeah, exactly. It's so well done. Oh.
And Jack is one of my favorite characters too.
Yes.
That the fact that they decided to make it the same Jack for all of those stories was genius, and it works so well.
I want to say it was Jamie's influence that got me started on reading the trades of that. I'm pretty sure.
Was that a book of the month also?
The first two might have been.
I'm almost positive we talked about it.
Yeah, because I'm looking it up, because I'm almost positive that I started reading it because it was a book of the month. So number one, A Conversation with Bill Willingham. I'll point that out. Comic Geek Speak episode 1274 back in 2012. The guys had Bill Willingham on talking about Fabletown and beyond. And then, yes, Book of the Month Club encores, meaning that there were multiple episodes. First, there was Volume 1, which was back in the very early days, 2005.
Wow.
September 29th, 2005. Didn't even have a episode number because that was before you guys were episode numbering the Book of the Month.
Yep.
And then there was the follow-up, which was the Encore, which was episode 462 back in 2008, which was volumes 2 and 3.
Jeez.
Yep. Easily found in the archives, gentlemen.
That's a way back.
Oh, I know. But if anybody wants to see what the original gang thought of the first 3 volumes, you can find that in 2 separate episodes of CGS in the archives.
I love when Ian acts as like our editorial box in a comic book page, you know. Check back to this issue. Fantastic.
Hey.
See this issue, Ian.
It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It makes perfect. All right, Chris, you're number 2.
All right. So The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man. Now, I've got several single issues in my alternates, but I wanted to include an actual just comic book in my list, and this was the first one I thought of. So Roger Stern's run on Spider-Man is legendary. And I know Dan Gavazin over on his great Spider Talk podcast, they're doing a whole season now on the Stern era.
Yep.
And we have some plans for that in the future as well.
Indeed.
But this was actually a backup story. So they did it in issue 248. The first story was Spider-Man fighting Thunderball from the Wrecking Crew. And then there was this story. And it's not in continuity in the sense that it's just a standalone story. And it's a half of a comic book, so it's short. It's one of the most, I mean, have you read this story, Shane?
No.
Okay, because knowing you, when you read it, they're gonna have to hospitalize you. Okay, so the premise is there's a Daily Bugle article about a boy who is ill in the hospital, and it's like a Make-A-Wish type thing. He wants to meet Spider-Man, and the story is how Spider-Man goes to his hospital room at night, and the boy is this huge fan. He has all this memorabilia and like old film footage of Spidey within like the Marvel universe. And they just start talking and reminiscing about his career. And I don't want to give away the ending because especially if you haven't read it, but if you want to read a story that's just not of the essence of Spider-Man, but of really the superhero concept, and at its most sort of like noble level, but also its most human, this is what you have to read. Because within the course of the story, again, it's short. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, he makes a decision when he's talking with this boy that is really kind of astounding. And he kind of, when he opens up to the kid and vice versa. If you're a Spider-Man fan or you're just interested in the character, if you've not read the Roger Stern era, which really isn't that long, it's in the 1980s, like it's when the Hobgoblin is introduced, for example. It's a classic run.
Yeah.
Most of the art is being done by John Romita Jr., but this story is Ron Frenz, who becomes a major Spider-Man penciler during the Tom DeFalco era, which follows Stern. I remember when I first read the story, I was very young when I read it, but even then it really moved me because it's so human. And it goes to the heart of both in real life and in the comics, how a child would view a hero, how a child perceives what a hero is.
Yeah.
And their awestruck view of a superhero. And then how in this moment they have together, how Spider-Man becomes even more of a hero by just spending some time and talking to this boy. And then what happens in their conversation. Shane, you have to read this.
Yeah.
And as I said, we're planning an episode down the road. We're going to talk more about this era, so you'll at least read it for that. But you're going to be in recovery, Shane. It's going to be rough for you.
What issue is it again?
issue 248.
Yeah. And I love that the image that I happen to put up has the accidental Star Wars product placement right
Yeah.
right there in the
Hey,
corner.
Marvel is making the comics then still.
That's true. That's true. And since you did mention Dan, I need to mention one thing that I was going to mention to you, and that is on a recent episode of the Amazing Spider Talk, season 5, episode 3. Everyone should go ahead and check it out. They did a deconstruction of the Kid Who Collects Spider-Man.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't listened to it yet.
With the one and only Ron Friends. And
Wow.
it's it's on my queue as well, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. But that is a seminal issue of Spider-Man, and yes, you're right. It gets to the heart of the character, 100%. Alrighty, and we're
Number
on
ones.
to our number ones. And Murd, I will start it off with you.
All right, then. Batman, The Long Halloween.
Oh, wow.
That's on my alternates too.
Brilliant. Brilliant. My number one, and it was kind of immediately my number one, Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo's Fantastic Four.
Ooh, unthinkable. Oh.
Yep.
Wow.
And, Chris?
So the challenge for my number one was I knew it was going to be a certain writer. The question was, this writer has so many great books, which one was I actually going to pick? And in the end, and there are all the rest of the alternates, by number one, because I've seen its impact on people who don't want to read comics, is Saga.
Oh, okay.
Excellent. And
Excellent.
that is my highest alternate. It almost made my list, so I'm very happy that it made yours. Shane.
Strangers in Paradise.
Oh!
I thought that was
Nice.
on the list.
Yep. Well done. Well done. Well done.
Jamie D is now smiling.
Oh yeah.
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 Wait. Hold on. Yes, he is.
There he is.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Right there. There we go. Boom.
Right above Ian's
Let's-
left nipple. There he is.
Yeah, he was getting a little titillating there. I like that. I like when you get risque.
My problem is that because it's being mirror imaged, I always forget which side is which when I'm actually looking. But
I had this really alarming, but in a very amusing moment of like you in your private life trying to like be alluring. Fantastic.
all right, Murd, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, Batman: The Long Halloween. Although I could almost have subbed in here, and a lot of them are on my alternates list. Almost any product of the collaboration between Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
For All
Because-
Seasons almost made my list, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great one too. Yep.
Yes,
That's on my
definitely
alternates.
up there. Superman for All Seasons, a couple of those excellent Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween specials
Yep.
that
Yep.
kind of led to the Long Halloween,
Daredevil
and
Yellow.
any of those like color-themed miniseries they did for Marvel.
Yep.
Because any and all of those projects did a fantastic job of distilling whatever character was being focused upon down to his or her bare essence. Just something about, and Jeff Loeb has never been the most florid of writers. You know, for me, he's always been kind of hit or miss, actually. He's produced some kind of stinker comics, but some brilliant ones as well. And then The Long Halloween definitely falls into the latter category. And as far as,
that
yes,
art.
there's a scene there. And Tim Sale's artwork, it's just, it's kind of impressionistic and also simplistic, and it's a kind of minimalist use of line and shape and shadow. But it's very versatile, and it can be evocative of everything from just the sunniest, most Rockwellian, nostalgic picture of American life to the darkest, seamiest pulp fiction. And this story kind of strays more into the latter category, once again, because it's telling us a tale of it's a 12-issue story from Batman's early career, and it's got a definite holiday theme. There is a character, a mysterious serial killer called Holiday, who is going throughout Gotham and killing a different underworld figure on a holiday, on a different month of every year. And so it's this ongoing, slowly unraveled murder mystery. It introduces the reader to a lot of important figures from Batman's rogues gallery, and allowing Loeb and especially Sale to put their signature imprint, visually in particular, on each and every one of them. That image that Ian just had up on screen a minute ago gave you a good group shot of a bunch of them. And so it introduces the reader to all those characters. It gives you a look into the thought processes of Batman as a tortured soul and as a logical detective as he tries to figure this out. This is very early in his career once again. This is deliberately pre-Robin, although the sequel to it, the maxi series Dark Victory, kind of shows the build-up to how he adopted Dick Grayson and Robin as a sidekick. Not quite as good, in my opinion, but the Long Halloween is just top notch. I mean, the holiday theme that's relatable to anybody once again who lives in an American culture and celebrates all the holidays involved. And I still remember. I was in high school when this came out. I remember reading the Thanksgiving issue with Grundy. Late on a Saturday night in my darkened bedroom, only a single floor lamp providing illumination, as I sat in my old wing chair and just kind of read through it. And that sequence towards the end where it goes wordless and it ends with the chilling tableau of murdered bodies seated around a Thanksgiving banquet table. I still get minor chills to this day every time I think about it. That really hit home for me.
Yep.
And so it's a basic Batman experience, and basic in the best possible sense. Basic in just being stripped down to the mythic essence. Just it's everything that's great about the character just is brought down to a nice broken down to a nice pulpy broth for easy consumption. And yeah, it's the best work that this excellent creative team have ever done, in my opinion. And they've done some, as I've said earlier, they did some really good stories together over the years.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, it's one that I would recommend to anybody who knows or is in any way interested about Batman.
Was this really their second foray after like Challengers of the Unknown, I think was their first, or am I wrong on that?
There had been a couple of Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween specials.
Yeah.
Before okay, I couldn't remember if they came first or not.
Ian, would
Yeah,
you
I'm
put
not
that
sure.
image back up again, please, for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'd honestly forgotten all about Chals. Thanks for mentioning that, Shane. But I don't know where that came chronologically in relation to the Halloween specials I mentioned.
Okay.
Look at again the artwork here. Look at Two-Face in shadow and the madness in those eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple, but just he captures everything in and that's it in shadow.
Yeah, how much he can say with just those two little round shapes in the middle of the field of shadow on Two-Face's.
Yeah.
And these like almost super deformed look he chose to give the Joker is so menacing and yet unlike any other depiction of the Joker that I've seen, but it just works so great. Actually, you know what? The closest I come would be the second design for the Batman the Animated Series. That's probably the closest that comes to this, you know, with like the at the time the missing lips. Eventually they gave them the lip back. But that design is the closest I'd say I'd come to this version of the Joker, but still frightening.
Great choice, Murd. Great choice.
And timely for that matter, Murd, because in June they will be releasing an animated movie of The Long Halloween.
All right.
Yep.
And like so many other DC direct-to-video animated features, I'm afraid it's going to fall short, in my opinion, because the animation style is just not going to do justice to the original art.
Yeah. I mean, it is 2 parts, though, so you will at least get the whole story. So that they've chosen to do the Dark Knight Returns route rather than trying to cram it all into an hour and a half. They're going to split it up into 2 movies. So that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Did Loeb say the Captain America White, that was never finished, correct? Or was it finished?
It was.
It came out and then it stopped and then it came out again. I don't know if they ever actually finished it though.
All right.
Let me see. Because
they published the Zero issue and then years went by.
Yeah, I remember the Zero issue, which I loved.
Yep. Then they republished the Zero issue and issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it ever got the full treatment.
Honestly, that ticked me off because 0 and 1 were published together bound together in a single issue.
Yeah.
And I refused to buy it because I'd already bought issue 0 all those years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be forced into paying an extra $1 to buy it again.
Okay, I think I think it did actually release. Yes. All 6 issues of it released. Let's all take a breath and then laugh at how long it took to happen for 6 issues. But July 2008 to December 2015.
Oh wow! So I never finished it. Okay, I have to get this.
Yeah, it's been collected.
All right, I'll have to get that.
Unfortunately, I haven't heard very good things about the rest of it. I
Okay.
think the Ways probably heard it more than anything else. But,
Yeah, I think Spider-Man Blue and Hulk Gray were much better than what
Oh,
Captain
yeah.
America ended up being.
And don't forget Daredevil Yellow.
Daredevil Yellow
yeah,
was
Daredevil. Yeah, right.
Oh,
You're right.
that was great.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Ian.
No problem. All right, so my number one. Again, it really wasn't any doubt. When I was thinking about books that could get you in the door, there are few seminal works that get that job done better than Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo's Fantastic Four. Again, another one that died way too soon was Wieringo, but he captured the essence of the Fantastic Four in every single image that he made. His thing is the thing that I think of when I think of the thing, because ha 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 ha. Thing. I think I said thing like 90 times there, but either way, it's like he almost has this like strange, almost like regalness to the way he draws the thing. Like he's not deformed, but he's also perennially grumpy.
Yep.
And it's something that works so great with like the original depiction of Ben Grimm and the way he's depicted there. It's not really coming out very well in film, but I know what that is. Yes.
It's Ringo pencil art from Unthinkable. It's when Doom goes down to commune with the demons for his bargain.
So good. So good. And just in general, like, this is what I think of when I think of Marvel's First Family. It's simple that you can see the fact that they are a family in the way that they're depicted throughout. And as the story built and grew, there were terrible situations that they were thrown into. Easily the most evil Doctor Doom that I've ever experienced.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. But
he's wearing his dead lover's skin as armor. Let's leave it at that, shall we?
Oh, I know. But I'll guarantee you that when we do get to the point, you're going to see a lot of this run in the Fantastic Four movie.
I would hope so.
I really do think that Marvel's going to look at that and think to themselves, this is what we have to.
Well, one of the great things Waid did was he coined the phrase to describe the FF, the Imaginauts.
Yes.
And which I thought I love that word because the Fantastic Four are so much more than superheroes.
Right.
And I think Waid really tapped into that. The sequence where they actually visit Jack Kirby is so powerful.
So good.
It's a brilliant run. Great choice, Ian.
Yep. Thank you. And there are multiple collections out there. There is a omnibus that's $100 that if you really want to track down, you can. But again, it's all easily accessible online in one form or another, whether it be Comixology or Marvel Unlimited or Comixology Unlimited. And there's other collections that I'm sure you could probably track down for cheaper. But it's another one of these things that goes in and out of print annoyingly. But you also have Mark Buckingham on art occasionally, and Howard Porter, and like a whole bunch of other people that had fill-in issues. And really, it's a perennial run, and I recommend it to anybody who wants to actually experience the first family of the Marvel Universe, because without them, there would not be a Marvel Universe.
Yep.
And this is them to a T.
Absolutely. And if you want to go old school, the floppies aren't expensive.
That is also true.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. If you want to find them in back issue bins, I mean, they're cheap.
I remember
they should be cheap anyway.
Remember, I had the holofoil edition of the like the first appearance of Doctor Doom's like horrifying armor.
Yes.
I think that was that 600 or 500. I think that might have been 500.
I think 500.
500. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah,
it's one of the when you think about great Doctor Doom stories, this is easily in like the top 3. Like,
absolutely.
It's like, I remember reading it with Waid where I'm paraphrasing, but he said he really wanted to reemphasize just how twisted and evil Doctor Doom really is. And boy, does he ever.
Oh my God, yes.
Like, I mean, there's the aspect of Doctor Doom that's like kind of like the majestic, almost royal-like Doom that you kind of almost root for.
That's not him.
That's not this story.
Nope.
It is not. And in fact, the Cantwell series, which I was just raving about in previous episodes, and again, I'm not giving away, but the way Cantwell ends that series just reminds you of why Doctor Doom is the most terrifying villain in the Marvel universe.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because in the end, he can't escape his own twisted nature, and Wade just goes right with that. I mean, woof!
You got
Great
it.
choice, Ian.
Thank you. All right, Shane.
All right. So, Strangers in Paradise, totally influenced by Jamie. I could have cared less to try and read this when it was coming out. I really can't even explain why. I just had no interest whatsoever. And I can still remember going through the first volume or two of this in Brian Deemer's house, and Jamie sitting there with this satisfaction of,
Totally can see it.
I told you you'd all like it, and you didn't believe me, and it took me years to get you to do it, but you read it and you love it.
Yep.
I think this is one of the best seminal works that you can give anybody. It is heartfelt, dramatic, comedic. It's a sitcom. It's a drama through and through.
It's even an espionage story.
It's espionage story. It has murder in it. It has a little bit of everything, and the artwork is phenomenal. The characters, you just absolutely fall in love with them through and through from start to finish. There's just nothing bad you can say about this. Kachu and Francine's story and David really is just phenomenal. Again, it sounds terribly sappy of me, but if you don't cry at the end of this book, I weep for you, because this is very, very heartfelt of a story, very heartwarming, very tragic in a lot of ways. It's just phenomenal. Start to finish.
It's one of the, I mean, for me, it's one of the greatest series in the history of the medium.
Yeah. And something about all of my picks, this you could give to people who like regular TVs and movies and rom-coms and sitcoms and drama TV, and you could say, here, read this, and you're going to get something out of it, and you're going to enjoy it, and the artwork's beautiful. Justice League is very superhero-ish for anybody young and old. Starman is your very swashbuckling adventure. Daredevil is kind of the same swashbuckling adventure. Bone is all ages. I mean, to me, these picks I have are something for everybody. And this one's really the most wide range that you could give everybody. It's not for kids. I would definitely say that.
Definitely not.
But you can give this to any young adult, and you should thoroughly enjoy this story.
And the story, I mean, it has such heart, because at the core of it, it's really about the love affair between these two women, which really starts when they're teenagers. There's the whole high school story that he does at one point series.
Oh yeah.
And he takes you, I mean, he's a living master, but he takes you through their entire relationship and the history and the ups and downs, and the mistakes that are made, some of which are awful. And it's the consummate example of what the medium can achieve.
Yeah. It's really their love story, their entire lives, and all these characters that come in and out of it.
Freddie.
Well, Freddie. But for me, it's all about David also.
Well, I mean, David is the if you think of it as a triangle, like he's the other key character.
Yeah.
And where the hell is the long form TV show for this?
Oh, you're not kidding.
There's apparently a film in the works.
It shouldn't be a film. It shouldn't be a film.
It's got to be episodic.
That's a mistake.
Yeah. Well,
no, don't make it a movie.
That was as of 2017, though, so I doubt that's actually going to wind up happening. But one thing I just wanted to quickly say is I'm we didn't plan this because we never know what we're going to do for our top fives until we actually say them out loud. But I'm super proud and happy that none of our lists were straight superheroes because they could have very easily been that way. But we
not
all,
if you want to get new readers,
which is exactly the point, sir. Which is exactly the point. This medium has everything, and I was hoping we'd go that way with our list, and we did, and I'm very happy about that.
And the hell of it is, we didn't even overlap at all. We didn't step on each other's toes. Didn't steal each other's list items.
Yep.
These picks of mine, especially for me, I mean, again, they're my picks, but they really are seminal of every aspect of comic books that I love.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. And Chris?
Well, as many listeners know, I've been raving for years about Saga and deeply lamenting its long hiatus. And let's put it this way. Every month when I brought home an issue, when I had the store, and then after I closed, I was just getting them through the mail, my wife wanted to read it. That's enough. Like, my wife is not a comic book person. Like, she appreciates the medium, but she's not like she's avidly reads comic books. And she was looking forward to me bringing home each issue. Mm-hmm. Now, in some ways, kind of like Strangers in Paradise, this is a book that at its core is about family and the ties that bind and the vicissitudes of family and friendship. And The Outer Trapping is this epic space opera, essentially, involving, two civilizations at war and how this couple who each represent the civilizations end up kind of on the run, and they have a child. And the narration is, as Ian is showing here, is the child as an adult remembering what she went through and these incredible adventures with her parents as they're essentially on the run. It's Brian K. Vaughan. And I've said before, in my humble opinion, Brian K. Vaughan is the greatest writer working in comics today and has been consistently for quite some time. He's all over my alternate list.
Oh, yeah.
I could have easily done a top 5 books of just Brian K. Vaughan books because I think any of them are very accessible for new readers.
Yeah.
But I think this is his masterpiece. Fiona Staples is the artist, right?
Yes.
I mean, look at it. I mean, except maybe Terry Moore, I don't think anybody does facial expressions better than Fiona Staples in comic book art.
Yeah.
The Lion Cat. So this is I mean, you got an alien with like a TV for a head. Like, they have so much fun, like coming up with these new worlds and civilizations and people, but it's all rooted, of course, in things that are very familiar to us on Earth as to how these people are interacting, what they're experiencing, the emotions they're going through, the war they're dealing with. And again, it's ultimately a book about family and often the heartbreak of the family experience as people have to split apart and all these different things. Yeah. It's been on hiatus now, I want to say, for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even longer, to be honest.
Because it ended on an incredible cliffhanger, the last issue before the hiatus. Ian's checking right now for us, which I appreciate.
Yep.
But whenever it comes back, I'm ready to go. And when I had the shop, because Image did the wonderful $9.99 Volume 1 trade, which they did for a lot of their, which is brilliant marketing. Mm-hmm. I would just have like 15 books of that like in stock at all times because I'm looking for something to read. Here you go. Don't just buy it. Yep. There you go. That's it. No one was ever dissatisfied when I recommended that book because it like Strangers in Paradise. It's a, even though it's in this far out, universe, it has something that every single person, if you have heart, you're gonna relate to this book. It is a masterpiece, and I can't wait to see how Vaughan and Staples end it.
We're actually approaching 3 years.
We're approaching 3 years. Okay.
Yeah. July 2018 was the last issue as of now. But we are going to get there. He keeps saying over and over again, and each previews that we do, we're going to point out that it's not there yet until it's there. Yeah.
And again, that's not us nagging or whining. It's because this book is that good.
Yeah.
And like, it's like with any artistic medium, most of the stuff is crap. and then there's like stuff in the middle that's worth reading, that's has something worth going for it.
Yeah.
Then there's the stuff up here, which is really just a handful of things.
Yep.
And then there's Saga. And I'm not being, I mean, I know I can be a melodramatic person. I'm not being hyperbolic. I think this book is that good.
And my favorite thing about it is that Brian K. Vaughan has said in interviews before, and I believe him, that there will never be a movie nor TV adaptation of Saga, because he wrote Saga and is writing Saga as a comic.
As a comic, that's great to hear.
And he has no ideas in his head for what an adaptation would be. And yet, simultaneously, it's one of the most cinematic and episodic things I've ever read. But that's just it. You get lost in the comic book. Your mind's eye takes you into it as if you're watching it on a big screen TV, and it's just stupendous that way.
Yep.
Just what he's able to achieve and what Fiona's able to achieve on the artwork. It's just it's the best. It's the best damn book. Yep. And I think we had a damn good list all around.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think we had
bravo, gentlemen.
Yep. Now let's go ahead and read off some alternates, and then we'll go ahead and wrap.
May I request that I go first, because I got to go to bed.
By all means, please.
Because I got to get up in the morning and go to my demoralizing virtual job. So, all right. Thank you, gentlemen, for this allowance. Again, a lot of it's Vaughn.
Mm-hmm.
So, Why the Last Man?
Yep.
Which that was another book in the store. You want a new comic to read? Here's volume 1. I had like 20 in stock at all times. Ex Machina, which Oscar Isaac doing the movie. Can't wait.
Yep.
Rucka and Lark's Lazarus, which I've been raving about for years on this program. Gotham Central.
Yes.
So people who love police procedurals, who want to get another idea of like the Gotham City, but not really from the perspective of Batman, you will love this book. I know Shane's a big fan. Masterpiece. As Murd mentioned, Sandman, of course. Pride of Baghdad, the Vaughn OGN, which is based on a true story about during the invasion of Iraq in 2003, when the animals escaped from the zoo during the mayhem, and it's about a pride of lions, and it's from their perspectives they roam the city. Also, a book when you end that you're probably going to be hospitalized. I had to put in something with Alan Moore, V for Vendetta, which I think if you want to get into Alan Moore, but you're a little intimidated by things like Watchmen, this is a great book to start with. Because it touches upon really universal themes about totalitarianism and freedom and individuality and so forth. G.I. Joe issue 21, Silent Interlude. If you want a master class in one comic about how to create a comic book, just look at that.
Yep.
Yeah. That is storytelling art at its finest.
Yep. So everything Brubaker and Phillips has done, but the one I picked out for my list is The Fade Out, which is their just amazing take on like late 40s Hollywood crime noir, murder and mystery on a film set. Every conceivable detail that nails that time period is there. I think it's them at the top of their game, which is saying something. Daredevil issue 47. Kevin, this one is for you. Brother, Take My Hand. Stan Lee, Gene Colan. If you want to see a great example of like the height of Marvel's Silver Age and like a one and done issue, it's Daredevil trying to help a recently blended Vietnam veteran. And Gene Colan's art is there's a scene, a whole sequence where Daredevil was fighting a bunch of assailants in a dark room. It's Gene Colan art. It is breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking.
Nice.
I've mentioned this book many times before. Master Kung Fu 114, A Fantasy of the Autumn Moon, which you talked about. I want to read back to the bins. Guess it's Doug Monk and Gene Day Art, who I've mentioned many times in the show. One of the most beautiful comic books I've ever seen in my life in terms of the artwork. Can't wait to see what they're going to do with Shang-Chi in the film. I think they have anything else. Nope, that was, there could be a million other things, but that's what I thought of for my alternates.
Superb, sir. Superb.
Brothers, sorry, I gotta go, but I got to get some beauty sleep, so to speak.
No worries. No
Yeah,
worries.
I'm not far behind you in that category.
Well, we got 5 minutes left us anyway, so it's all good.
We'll talk soon, my friends. Good night.
Have a good night, sir.
This is an honor. Ciao. Indeed.
Alrighty, Shane, you want to read off your alternates?
Yeah, I have New Frontier, Sandman, Fables, New Teen Titans. I think that was a great book that you could easily hand somebody to get into from issue 1 and start from the ground up on there.
Yeah, the characters are certainly well known by now.
Morrison JLA, another great jumping on point. You don't need to know much history of the JLA to start there, and it goes on for a good couple years of great stories.
Yep.
The JSA that followed right in the middle of the JLA run. I know James Robinson was part of that. I forget, was that Jeff Johns as well that started that?
Yeah, I think it was both of them. There might have been another writer involved as well, but
David S. Goyer, I want to say, was in it.
Okay, yep. That does a great job of giving you some history of the DC universe and oh God, what's the word? Legacy characters, and a way that the old guard teaches the new guard. It's phenomenal. I think if you talk to somebody that likes, if they say I like old GI Joe cartoons, Transformers cartoons, 80s stuff, I think you point them to the GI Joe comics of the 80s from Marvel. Much different than the cartoon, much more serious.
Oh, yeah.
I have hardback volumes of them. I think a lot of them are out in trade at some point. I don't know if any of them are in print right now, which is kind of a problem with that one, but it's a great read nonetheless. Black Panther, again, going with DC's upcoming Blue and Gold miniseries, you want to get steeped in something where this all began, not only the Justice League, but go to the original Booster Gold and Blue Beetle series and read their history. Get your foot in the door. They're lighthearted, good reads, 24 issues each. It's not a huge commitment. The Batman 66 comic that was out a while ago that was, I think, digital first. It's a great romp in nostalgia. If you like the 60s Batman show. Neil Adams Batman, there's 3 volumes of them, and I know there's trades out of all of them. The Golden Age, you might need some history on that, but that's a great self-contained story that expresses what can be done in a comic as well.
That's true.
Marvel's Kingdom Come, Long Halloween. For me, the X-Men in the 90s, X-Men #1, that was my first X-Men book. And then I read everything Uncanny and X-Men for years after that. Stars and Stripe, For All Seasons. What was the Grant Morrison Superman story that they did a movie of?
All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman. I think that would be another great one to read.
I agree.
For kids specifically, I mean, I love them as an adult, but kid kind of books, kid-friendly books. Batman Adventures, JLA Unlimited, Teen Titans Go, Superman Adventures, the Marvel Adventures, Ally, Gronk, all fun kids books that are just great reads, great art.
Absolutely.
And with DC re-releasing Batman Adventures and Superman Adventures recently, very easy to pick up, very inexpensive comparatively. They'd be great to track down and get at a shop or Amazon or whatever.
Definitely. All right, I'll read off mine real quick here. Brew Baker's Captain America. I'm surprised that wasn't on Chris's list, but also, another one that you can very easily pick up and read in full and love and enjoy. Morrison's JLA was on my alternates list as well. The Dark Phoenix saga. I do feel like that's a seminal X-Men work that could very easily be read on its own, and you get the idea of who the X-Men are. Miles Morales Spider-Man, the Ultimate Collection, like his origin, and then going from there. Ms. Marvel, any of the Ms. Marvel stuff with Kamala Khan is well worth a read. Superman for All Seasons, which has been mentioned already by multiples. Invincible on my list. Shock of shocks, people know me. Tiny Titans, Art and Franco's Tiny Titans.
Oh, yeah. That'd be a great one.
Absolutely. For kids, definitely. 100% on there. Mark Waid's Flash run.
Oh, that's a good one. Forgot about that.
Superb and well worth your time. Batman Hush on the list as well.
almost had that on there, but I felt like for me, you'd have to know too much about Batman's history, but it is a great story.
I think it's a decent standalone, to be entirely honest, considering
Yeah.
Hush himself is a new character that's thrown in there. The only real parts that you would really need to know are the stuff involving, what would eventually become the Red Hood.
Yeah.
And
And I guess after all these Batman movies, most of those characters are out there. Anyway, yeah, you're probably right. That should be on a list. Yeah.
Gotham Central was on mine as well. All Star Superman on mine as well. Paper Girls, another Brian K. Vaughan property.
Yeah.
Soon to be a series as well. I believe Amazon is making a Paper Girls series. They actually recently just cast a bunch of the characters, so that's definitely happening. JLA Avengers on my list as well. If you want to cross over between the two biggest teams in DC and Marvel, there's your crossover. And because Chris didn't say these, but he says them a lot, Monstrous and Chris Priest's Black Panther. Because I think you don't really need to be familiar with Black Panther to read Chris Priest's Black Panther and get to know the character. So
Everett K. Ross is kind of your neophyte POV into the King's War.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, and there be my alternates, and Murd, over to you.
Okay. Don't have a super long list of them myself this time. A little bit of overlap with other people's lists this time. I had Bone on my alternates list for one. I had Batman Year One, and also John Byrne's Superman Man of Steel miniseries.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, the one time I got to teach a section of college-level students when I was a grad student. We were expected to teach from one set textbook. It was like an anthology of pop culture essays, and we could add whatever other secondary texts we wanted, to a limit, because the kids had to pay for these things after all. The additional thing I put on my course reading list was Superman Man of Steel by John Byrne. And to this day, I regret not doing a better job of teaching it, because I feel like the kids felt like they paid money to buy this thing, and we did almost nothing with it in class. But it's a good example of revisionist thinking, a la the 1980s, as far as superheroes go. I had Sandman on the list. I had Hellboy, and that might actually have made it up into my top 5 if I had a better idea of which of the many Hellboy miniseries one-shot spin-offs were best. Probably Seed of Destruction, which I think was the first one. But it's a good, like a horror adventure crossover kind of concept. And he's been in movies. Let's see, what else do I got here? Superman for all seasons and just about anything Loeb and Sale. I had The Tick, which is a good humor material, and it's a character that most people know.
Yep.
Let's see. I have Lock and Key on here from the Joe Hill dynasty. I actually do have Watchmen on this list. And while I think it depends on on the beginning reader that we're recommending these things to.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's probably just the insecure fanboy / frustrated scholar in me that's just wanting to hold that up to, just to defend the medium against the opprobrium of, elitist disdain against them, just to prove that comics and even the lowly superhero comic used as a vehicle of high art.
Good point.
Although I also agree with your arguments against it, Ian, because it's definitely an advanced text. It's not really for most beginners. It's really for the sophisticated, educated beginner, if any.
Definitely.
Let's see, what else do I got here? Almost to the end here, actually. For the kids, SpongeBob comics, which actually had a very long run through Bongo and United Plankton Pictures, like 70-some issues, I think, all told, and a lot of agreed creators worked on that. So there have been 20 years worth of kids growing up with SpongeBob SquarePants now. I think that would be a good gateway for a lot of them. And then to finish up here, couple of things that I just kind of scribbled down here as we were going along based on things that other people said. When Chris mentioned that Brent Anderson drew X-Men God Loves Man Kills, I had to put Astro City down.
Good point.
Specifically, the first 6-issue miniseries, Life in the Big City from the mid-90s, because Astro City, it was good for a while and then got kind of Byzantine and weird once we got into like the Dark Age and the ongoing series that followed. But that first 6-issue miniseries was just the nectar of good superhero comics. and that street level perspective of superheroes. It's I can see that might be appealing to people who are outsiders to the superhero genre as a whole. And last but not least, something that I only thought of as we were going through this, and I'm amazed didn't make it into anybody's top 5, although I did hear you had it on your alternates list, Shane. Marvels. Music and Alex Ross, which is just one of the most beautiful depictions of the Marvel Universe and all its wonders and terrors that has ever been produced.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. 100% the case. I forget whether I actually said this or whether I skipped over it, but also on my list was Astonishing X-Men.
Okay.
The Whedon Cassidy.
Yeah. I mean, because that's also a nice like microcosm of like everything the X-Men are in one story. I think they did a very good job with that.
Yeah. Just
and like you've said,
yes, definitely.
Many times, Ian, a lot of the stuff, like even the Starman things, I know most of that's out of print right now, but you can find it on the DC app.
Yes.
I don't know if it's on Comixology, but it's definitely the whole series is on the DC app. So it is somewhere to go to read it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, all these places are ones to do that. I think there might be Starman trades of some sort still in print. Even if not the omnibuses. I think they started re-releasing it just in softcover trades, but I could be wrong. I just had that feeling. Oh, well, okay. This is coming soon. August 17th, 2021. It's not a softcover, it's a hardcover. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is a paperback, but it's a compendium. They're actually putting out a Starman compendium.
Oh.
Which has at least 50 issues of it from the looks of it. And I think it does straight up just include most, if not all, the stuff that was in the omnibuses. Because I see Starman 0 to 42, the 80-page giant, annual number 1, annual number 2, Secret Files number 1, Showcase 95 number 12, Showcase 96 number 4, 96 number 5, Power of Shazam 35, Power of Shazam 36, and the Shade 1.4.
Huh. So that's a good first half of the series, including all the extra stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that's Compendium 1. So hopefully there'll also be a Compendium 2 eventually.
Yeah, and that would finish off the story with whatever else extras are in there. Huh, interesting. Exactly. I didn't know that was coming.
Yep. And there are definitely trades, smaller trades available, whether they be online or, you can find them in once conventions start up again. I guarantee you'll be able to find the soft covers in random bins as well.
Well, and I think back issues are fairly inexpensive too, compared to when I was acquiring the back issues, which they were somewhat more difficult in the heyday of it. But back issues in general, I think of that series now are fairly cheap.
Yep. And if we haven't said it enough, more to come on Starman eventually. Wink,
that's true.
A wink, a wink. And we'll have an official reveal on that once we figure out exactly which ones we're doing. Anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, excellent top 5 all around, gentlemen. This was a wonderful time. And I'd just like to thank you all for being a part of it, because I love getting listeners involved. Sponsored yet again by you, the listeners. I didn't do my point earlier. Patreon.com/ComicGeekSpeak. Thank you guys so much for your support and your continued support of the show in any way, shape, or form. We love you for it, and we'll leave the light on for you, Motel 6 style. All right, Shane, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, let's do it.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com. To send us an email, the address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com and let us know what you think of our picks and give us your ones that we may have forgotten. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. To find us on YouTube, it's youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Thank you to everybody who contributes to the episode. We really appreciate it and could not do it without you. Please send in your Muddle the Merds, because those will be coming in future episodes. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
Wanted to make sure I got that super ugly artwork on there now that the glass is empty.